Welcome to Podpinions, where the world's on fire, and we show up like it's a backyard barbecue. Politicians, roasted. Woke trends, torch. Common sense, we've got you covered.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Podpinions. I'm Bruce.
I'm Rich.
And today we have a special guest.
Derin De Vuono.
Yes.
From retired NYPD, helicopter pilot, and all-around nice guy.
Yeah. Why don't you give us a little background there?
All right. Well, I joined the police department in 2002. I did a 20-year career, started my career off in Chinatown, 5th Precinct. Then served 10 years in the New York City Police Aviation Unit as a helicopter pilot. Then finished out my career in the 6-0 Precinct, which is Coney Island.
Nice. Did you get to ride the Ferris wheel?
I could have. I didn't, but I could have. And then I moved out here because, quite frankly, I just couldn't stand being around New York anymore.
I don't blame you.
And it's not that New York is the problem. New York is fine. It's the New Yorkers that make it bad.
Or is it the people that are coming in now?
Well, there's that too. So, yeah.
No, because I what they did, like the Roosevelt Hotel with all the illegals, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And now they're out, from what I understand.
But it's only a matter of time before somebody else just moves them right back in or just shifts them to another location. I mean, everything that's done administratively in that city is so underhanded. And I've said for many years that if it wasn't for the corruption in that city, if you could wave a magic wand and just snap your fingers, if you got rid of the corruption, the city would collapse in on itself because it's been working off of corruption for so long. It needs it to survive.
Well, like what kind of corruption are you talking about?
Just mostly financial corruption. I mean, the way that they spend money there is off the chain. I mean, you saw with the scandals with, Eric Adams himself,
right,
the current mayor of New York. You know, he's been embroiled in corruption.
Well, how was he
scandals.
when you were under him when he was police commissioner, right?
No, he was never the police commissioner.
Or whatever he was.
He was a captain in the police department.
Okay.
And that was when I was a rookie cop. I don't remember exactly when it was that he left the police department, but thankfully I was in Manhattan when that happened, and he was active in Brooklyn. So I didn't have to really deal with him that much. But his reputation certainly preceded itself, and it wasn't a very good one.
Because you're talking about like collapsing in on itself. I remember this has to be early 1980s, and I was working full time as a musician, and I happened to wind up on the Joe Franklin show. Do you remember that?
I do not.
Okay, he's younger than me. Anyhow, he's on Channel 9, like late at night. It was like the Johnny Carson show of New York, right? It was local WOR. So anyhow, I was on this show, and I had my spot, and then I moved down the couch, right? And there was the Democratic convention was at, I think it was down at Jacob Javits, I believe. So they were coming into town, right? And miraculously, somehow, all the hookers and the squeegee guys, everybody disappeared for like a week and a half, gone, right? So anyhow, I moved down the couch, and I'm sitting there, and I forget who the senator was. It was a New York State senator came on, and they were talking. I zoned because I figured my segment's done. I'll just sit here and right? And my brain was somewhere else. And all of a sudden, Joe turns to me and goes, "So, Maestro, what do you think?" And it's like I had no idea what they were talking about, like zero. And I said, well, I have a question. Oh, sure, go for it. All right, so how come, like the Democrats coming to town for this convention, and I'm saying this to the senator who's sitting next to me, and I said, how is it that you get rid of all these squeegee people and all the hookers down at like by the tunnel, and like it's all super clean? Like where'd they go? Florida? Like where'd you send them? Like where did they go? And they all just looked at me. It's like, don't go there.
You got the look.
I did. I got daggers, man. It was like unbelievable. But like, how did they do that? Like, where did they go? You know, even now, like the squeegee guys are gone.
Well, I can tell you that when I first came on the job, the squeegee guys, and I'll just refer to that as a general term,
right?
Mayor Giuliani pretty much did away with all of that. You know, he wanted to clean up the image of the city.
He really cleaned it up.
And he did. He did a fantastic job. I mean, the New York City that I went into as a cop was a very different New York City that I visited as a kid. And that was when we were using the broken windows policy. You know, anybody who's willing to commit small crimes is going to escalate those into larger crimes. Right. And it was a good policy. And I mean, the problem the Democrats had with it is it worked. And it pulled back the curtain. We see you behind the curtain, you know, the man behind the curtain. Right. And that bothered them. You know, unfortunately, it exposes what things really are and who is propagating it. And so by the time I came out, we were told, if you see a squeegee guy, you take action. You know, you write him a summons, get him out of there, get him off your post. You know, if you're on a foot post, get him off your post. Just kick him onto somebody else's post, make them their problem, as long as it's not your problem.
This is when Giuliani was in.
Well, I came in very, very shortly after Giuliani. So I came in, my start date was July 1st of 2002.
Okay, so he just left.
Yeah, and I graduated the police academy in, it was the middle of January of 2003. So, you know, first I was temporarily assigned in Midtown South, of all places. You know, it's kind of the Hollywood of New York City. Right. And 42nd Street and, you know, all at Times Square.
And that was after it got cleaned up.
Yeah, that was after all of that was done. So,
man, I remember before that, it was a shithole.
Oh, it was a mess. And if you went one avenue over to 8th Avenue, it was still the same old 42nd Street. It was just Times Square itself is what cleaned up. What was all cleaned up. But all of those squeegee men, they were gone. And even homeless people, you know, if it's, they wanted to clean up the image of the city. And it just, you never saw them. You know, the squeegee guys, you just didn't see them. And, you know, the message got received and they just weren't there. I never once in my career saw a guy run up to a car trying to clean it with a squeegee, because it had been effective. You know, the measures that were taken. Yeah, the measures that were taken were effective. And
accountability means something. If they're going to pay a fine or have an issue with what they're doing, if it's illegal and they have to pay the price for that, then that's effective, right?
Right. And then, you know, typically what would happen is they wouldn't pay the fine. They would just get written what we called a criminal court summons, and you know, they wouldn't pay it. And then a warrant goes out for your arrest, and then it just becomes a pain in the butt.
Right.
And
well, how do you track them down if they're homeless?
Well, you really don't.
What address do you use?
So, you get creative.
Bush number 2, Central Park.
Because back in those days, you know, this whole ticket quota thing that it doesn't exist. Well, here's a little spoiler alert. It existed. Except we had a term for it. We called it, or at least our bosses called it, paying the rent. So, you know, we were expected.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So we were expected, you know, now they have a different name for it. It's called, I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Quota system.
We don't call it that in the department anymore, though. It has a more politically correct and proper sounding name, and it's called performance expectations.
But it's a quota.
Effectively, yeah. Although I will say in recent years, they've really, because of complaints made by police officers, and I know I'm kind of getting off the beaten track here, but
there is no beaten track on this show.
But for purposes of, I don't want to say promotion, because promotion can be guaranteed for you through competitive examinations, written examinations. But if you wanted to go to a detail or some kind of a specialized unit, you needed your commanding officer's recommendation. And the first thing they would check is, how is his activity? How many arrests has he made this month? How many summonses has he written? How many of this? How many of that? And what's his performance at traffic court? You know, does he have a winning record? You know, all of those things kind of start to add up and determine whether or not that commanding officer is gonna sign his name on that recommendation. And if you weren't meeting your performance expectations
quota,
then you didn't get that letter of recommendation, and it made it very, very difficult for you to transfer into one of those specialized units.
Wow.
So
then when did you move into the helicopter thing?
So I was very fortunate because I wasn't an overly active cop, but you know, some of the cops that I worked with were, I would say, less than motivated. And when I was a younger cop, I had about 5 years on the job when that happened. So I hadn't quite left the honeymoon period of the job, because no matter how I feel about that department and no matter how I feel about the way the political wave has shifted towards law enforcement, I still believe in the work and I still believe in what policemen do.
You just don't like the package it's in.
I don't like I don't like in major municipal police departments where the marching orders are coming from, which is in a large city like New York, it's obviously going to be very politically motivated and driven. But to go back to what you said, how did I get to the aviation unit? I really did the bare minimum. I brought in my 1 or 2 arrests a month, and I gave them my 17 summonses a month. And just by doing
quotas,
food insecurity.
That's right. Starvation.
I paid my rent. I was on time with my rent.
Okay.
And that was enough compared to the other, some cops that were more senior that had given up because they kind of adopted this, why am I bothering doing this? Because, trying to do police work right now is, I used the analogy earlier with somebody else. It's like trying to soak up the ocean with a kitchen sponge. It's, what difference am I really making out there? Right. Because we're unappreciated, we're underpaid, and we knew that going into the job. That's how the public was going to react to us. What we were warned about and we just didn't want to accept was how our own department was going to treat us. And they, in a lot of cases, were worse than the public. I can deal with...
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Somebody's always got to be to blame. But again, I'm kind of diverging from your original question. How did I get to the aviation unit?
We'll get there eventually.
We got plenty of time.
Yeah, right.
The internet is endless.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore. He's watched.
I set him up for that. He's waiting for that one.
He's been practicing.
And I nailed it.
Yep.
But so just by doing the bare minimum, it was actually kind of a funny story. I'll give you a quick anecdote about it. My partner and I, we had heard that the mounted unit, the horses, were taking partner pairs because they were so desperate for personnel that you come over here, if you guys both pass what they call remount training, which is your initial training for the horses and all that stuff, we'll partner you up. You'll go to the same command and you'll work together. And, I was very close with my partner. As a matter of fact, when my son was born, there were 3 people other than myself and my wife. There were 3 people present there. There was my wife, obviously, myself, her mother, my brother, and my partner, and me, obviously. But
and your kid.
Well, he came a little later.
Okay.
he came at I think it was 5:02 in the evening.
Okay.
But we were very close, and to this day, we still are close. I still talk to him.
Which is great.
Yeah. And we went to our commanding officer, and we asked him if he would be willing to sign a recommendation for both of us to put in for and go to the mounted unit. And at the time, our commanding officer was this was in Chinatown, so this was a very short Chinese commanding officer. He was a captain, and he said, "Come into my office." So we sat down in his office, and now we're nervous because we had very limited interaction with him. We went in, we did our job, and we, one of the things that you kind of learn is try to stay under the radar. If they know your name, it's usually a bad thing. Just try to stay under the radar. So he brings us into the office. Now, also understand that this commanding officer formerly came from what we called ESU, Emergency Services Unit, which is the New York City Police Department's SWAT team.
Okay.
But it's kind of like SWAT on steroids. They do a little bit more than just SWAT stuff. They're very, very highly trained personnel. And he had come from there, and they gave him Chinatown as a command, and he really didn't want to be there, and he wanted to get back to emergency services. But this is where he was. So he looks at me and he says, Derin, he says, what do you want to go to Mounted for? And I said, well, it's an opportunity to move on. You don't want to tell him because I don't want to stay here. You don't want to tell your commanding officer that. So, it's an opportunity. We want to expand our horizons. We want to see more of what the job has to offer us and blah, blah. Everything you're supposed to say in a job interview is.
And he knew you were full of shit.
And he knew it because he's been there, for the same reason you want to go back to emergency service, So he looks at me. And he says to me, Derin, and right there, I was caught off guard because I really honestly didn't know that this man knew my first name.
Wow.
I had never had an interaction. I'd never had a conversation with him. So first he hits me with my first name, and I was just kind of like, uh-oh, Right. And then he says, aren't you a pilot? And I said,
so you were a pilot before this?
Yeah, I was a pilot long before
okay.
I came on. I became a pilot when I was 17 years old.
Oh, I didn't see that part. I didn't know.
Yeah, so I was a pilot early on.
Okay.
So he goes, aren't you a pilot? And I said, now I'm thinking, how does he know that?
Right.
Is he looking through my jacket? So he and I said, yes, sir. And he goes, why don't you put in for aviation? And I said, well, I really don't have any connections in aviation, and I don't know what my chances are. And right now, Mounted is looking for people. Then he looks at my partner and he says, what do you want to do? And he goes, actually, I want to go to ESU. And, that kind of rung a little chime in his heart because that's where this commanding officer came from. So he says, so what did the two of you guys putting in for Mounted for? What do you want to smell like an effing horse? And we were like, well, these are really what we want to do. And he's like, he looks at it, listen, if you guys want to go to Mounted, I'll sign your recommendation. You can go to Mounted. But he goes, you fill out an application, send it to aviation. You fill out an application and give it to me, and then I will deliver it to emergency service. And we looked at each other. My partner and I looked at each other and we were like, okay, thank you, sir.
That's cool.
We got up, we went out, and then we proceeded to work our tour. And obviously in the patrol car that night, we had a pretty interesting conversation. That went a lot different than we thought it was going to go.
Especially with the first name thing. Right?
Yeah. So we kind of laughed about that. Lo and behold, I filled out my application for aviation, and 6 months later was picked up into aviation. And
so now, were you fixed wing before?
I was a fixed wing pilot. I had actually never even sat in a helicopter before I went to the aviation unit. So I go to the aviation unit, and I'm hearing stories of other guys. There are other guys that had been applying for the aviation unit for years. They had been on 4 interviews. I went in for 1 interview, and boom, I got picked up. So I do consider myself very fortunate that I got picked up. I had, at the time, right around 5.5 years on the job. I was a little shy of 6 years on the job. So, I was going in very low time, all things considered. Like I said, you had guys that had 13, 14 years on the job that had been fighting to try to get into that unit. But
the charming personality, that's what did it.
It must have been that. I didn't have as much gray hair back then either, so and my alluring smile.
Right. He fits right in here.
I know. We're going to get another seat here. Have to get another boom mic set up.
So I went to aviation and I served there for 10 years. And
we do need more crew. Just
we do.
So, and I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to that, but I would have to put a demand down for one of these shirts.
All right.
So, but and then for 10 years I worked there, which put me at 16 years on the job.
So wait. So exactly what does the aviation unit do?
So the New York City Police Aviation Unit is tasked with several tasks. Not to sound redundant. Probably a poor choice of words. I'll probably get made fun of that in the comments section below. But there's a wide variety of what we did at the time. And we did patrol functions, whenever there were jobs that would come up, for perp searches or
I mean, on the ground.
it would come over on the ground, but we would give air support to that.
Oh, okay.
So, if, shootings or anything like that.
So you'd be the guy hovering up there with the searchlight.
Exactly. Or infrared and things like that. So that was patrol's function. We also did, whenever we had a dignitary come into town, whether it was the president of the United States or another foreign dignitary or whatever, Secret Service would come to us and we would fly Secret Service. So we did all the aerial recon and all the advance work for the motorcade when any of these dignitaries would be on the move. We had a schedule and then there was a contact, a person of contact. And whenever they were moving, we were in the air and we were ahead of them, making sure, just to give you an example, if they're moving up the FDR Drive, for those of you familiar with New York City, the FDR Drive is a main thoroughfare of what they use. And, vehicle at this exit on the side, it's a red station wagon, whatever description of the vehicle. And they would send people, Secret Service. I mean, they would make sure, is it a broken down vehicle or is it somebody there with illicit intentions but, and they were no joke. I mean, you realize just how good the Secret Service is at their job most of the time, of the time. When they have their A game players, they're very good at what they do. I mean, it's actually pretty impressive to watch them. The event notwithstanding, but so that was another function that we did, and we were tasked with doing air sea rescue functions, and they consisted of anybody, particularly in the summertime, if there was any chance of a person going into any of the navigable waterways in New York City.
It's like the East River, Hudson River.
Harlem River, the ocean surrounding the area. We had helicopters and crew that were trained to go out and be able to effect rescues. Now, that included jumpers off of bridges. That included,
how often does that happen?
More than you would think. Because people... We know that there are a lot of people with mental illnesses in the world, and usually we refer to them as Democrats. But
fits right in.
But sometimes you'd have these people. A lot of these people, some of them you really do feel bad for. Some of them, not a whole lot of them, because a lot of times these are people that are either seeking attention, as we know with the current status of social media, attention is a hell of a drug. Yeah. It's more addictive than any other drug out there right now. You look at these people who like to call themselves influencers, which cracks me up because they really don't influence anybody. They love the sound of their own voice, and they.
I thought that's what. Oh, I thought that's what we were doing.
Yeah. No, we're doing Podpinions. We're sharing our opinions, and that happens to be one of mine. But they love the attention. I mean, you get some people that they'll go up on the George Washington Bridge, and here's a fun New York City fact if you didn't know this: the George Washington Bridge, at least at the time, I don't know if this is still current, but at the time was the heaviest travel bridge on planet Earth. There's a lot of cars going across that bridge. Right. And so some people, when you get a jumper or somebody who calls 911 and says, I feel bad and I'm going to jump off the George Washington Bridge, they get to watch all the pretty lights show up and shut down traffic. And then the helicopter shows up and
it's all about them.
Yeah. And then you get, 4 or 5 fire department boats and 2 or 3 police department boats. And meanwhile, they're on the other end of the bridge recording it with their phone. And you're looking for somebody who's not even there. But because of the fact that there was a possibility that somebody may end up in the water,
you have to show up.
We have to go in case they go in and they're still viable for rescue.
Right. Now, what happens to that person when they get caught?
Most of them don't get caught.
Wow.
If there's a person on the bridge that really, truly was contemplating doing it and they don't go and the cops get there and, literally and proverbially talk them off the ledge.
6th floor at Bellevue.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. They're not they're not placed under any kind of arrest or anything. I mean, they're going to Bellevue,
Right.
but and for those of you who don't know, Bellevue it's one of the hospitals in Manhattan that has the main psychological wing, but.
I forgot to turn my phone off.
It's just like the movie theater. They
Isn't
tell
it?
you 4 times.
I know, right?
And
it's on the screen.
And there's always going to be
the
3.
two of them told me several times to turn my phone off, and I didn't.
And there's a guarantee somebody's phone's going to go off, and somebody's going to answer it.
On speakerphone.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, in a restaurant when somebody's talking on the speakerphone.
That makes me crazy.
Yeah.
We went out to dinner the other night, right? So they had us in the middle of the restaurant, right? So I said to the waiter, I said, "Look, can we have that booth like over there? Let me see." So he goes over and talks to the manager, right? Yeah, you can move them. So off we go. So now we're sitting in this little corner. Nobody's around us. These 2 people come in, sit down directly across from us at a 2-top, right? The chick is on the phone, on speakerphone. He's like sitting there yelling, trying to be heard. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. I just wanted to go over and like slap both of them.
It takes all kinds.
It does. Anyhow, that was an aside.
So anyway,
So back to the Bellevue Hospital thing.
so yeah, they don't get charged with any kind of a crime because
Do they get charged like for like all you guys showing up?
nope. In
I'm
fact,
talking
whenever
financially.
nope,
They don't get a bill?
whenever we effected a rescue, they received no bill
Wow.
because it's part of the function that we provide as a police department. But so then, like I said, I worked 10 years, and then the way I'll say it right now is I left the aviation unit. Those were under, some people would call it funny circumstances. That may be a topic for another discussion on another day.
But you retired.
But I did fully retire from the police department, and they pay me just to keep waking up in the morning. And when the pension fairy shows up at the end of the month, I look at that and I laugh. And for all of you people out there that are saying, I pay your salary, well, now you're paying me just to wake up in the morning. Thank you very much for that.
I think that's great. Yeah. I really do. I think that's great. So now what happened to New York now? I mean, after Giuliani left, it kind of went back in the toilet.
Well, as much as I did not like him, and I don't, and you'll never
You don't
hear
like
me-
Rudy?
No. What I'm about to say.
Oh,
As much as I did not like, I'm drawing a blank, Bloomberg. Bloomberg is, I'll leave it at that. I think my lack of, my mother said, if I don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything.
right.
Here's what I feel about Mayor Bloomberg. So anyway, and also understand, I want to give a shout out to the late Paul Harrell, who, if you guys ever watched him on YouTube, I don't make any claims that anything I say comes from a place of greatness or origins of greatness, and I'm kind of misquoting him there a little bit, but I try to get a chuckle in here and there when I can.
Absolutely.
But
Have you guys noticed that Bloomberg has been conspicuously quiet lately?
yeah,
That scares me.
it doesn't frighten me. I think he's advanced enough in age where I don't think he's going to be what I will term a problem anymore. Because let's not forget, he ran as New York City mayor as a Republican. He was a Republican mayor of New York City.
Well, he was a rhino.
but under the ticket
under
of
the- yeah,
Republican.
Right.
And then he ran, well, if you want to call it that, he pretended to run for president as a Democrat on the
Right.
Democrat ticket. But Bloomberg came in, and Bloomberg, he kept certain policies in place that Giuliani had, in which cleaned up New York City and gave us tools as cops to be able to affect our jobs. And, well, that bothered people. There's certain people out there, once again, call them Democrats, and they didn't like the effectiveness to which we were doing our
So
jobs.
Bruce and I talk about this all the time. What are they so afraid of?
I mean, again,
Here you were a cop doing your job. What were they afraid of for you doing your job?
the biggest answer, and believe you me, this was a topic of conversation among cops probably going all the way back to 1902. But I can tell you these conversations were had in the car with my partner.
Really?
Oh, yeah. What is it? And consistently what we came up with is the exposure of the truth. Some people don't know how to behave themselves. When they don't behave themselves, things must be done. Most of the people who hate the cops, they hate us, but we're willing to do things, and we have to do things that they do not have. And I'll be a little bit crass here, but they don't have the sack to step up to the plate and do themselves. They're the first ones to pick up that phone and call us when they see somebody. That one makes me nervous. But when we show up, and this has literally happened, we'll show up on a call that they made. And when we're forcibly removing somebody they're the first ones yelling at us on camera, leave him alone. He didn't do anything. And it's, you called us. But
wow.
But the reality of the situation, and remember, there's plenty of people out there, your audience that's watching, some of them, they say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I lived it.
Right.
I can only speak to my experience in it, and this was a major part of my experience. We're talking about half of this country cannot agree with the other half of this country on the color of an orange. And it depends on who tells them what that color is. And they will toe that partisan line no matter what, just to be contrary.
Right.
Well, you're talking about, attention seekers, right? Now, I showed you that Facebook thing. I said, scroll through this, right? One of my musician friends, right? Who's out of his mind. He's so far left, he's right.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's almost full circle.
Yeah,
Anyhow, but that, I don't get it. Like, that whole thing, I just don't get why they hate us so much.
I contemplated this a lot, and I've given this a lot of thought. And half the time, I look at these people and what they think, and I say to myself, there's no way they really believe this. And I'm trying to think of a topic off the top of my head.
But they do believe it.
They absolutely do believe it, but it's so ridiculous. I have to tell myself sometimes, do they really think that? Or is this a show? Is this just to keep the opposition alive? Because, I mean, let's face it, you do need a certain amount of opposition, even no matter how much you love your political party. Something's got to keep them in check.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I hate a lot of Republicans too.
And I do too. I'm and in full disclosure, I'm registered as an independent. And
get out.
Well, no, the reason for that is the way I see it is when you register as either a Democrat or a Republican, that comes up on their information. They know they actually, and they don't know your name. They just know, this guy is a registered Republican. This guy's a registered. Those are votes we're going to get. They expect your vote.
Right.
They
I don't
have
ever
to work for it.
I don't ever want them thinking that they automatically have my vote. Right. If you want my vote, you're going to earn my vote. And as an independent voter, you have to earn my vote.
I was independent until like I said, about 2 years ago when I wanted to vote in the primary. And of course, we can't vote as an independent. So I changed parties. But until that point, I felt the same way. If you want my vote, you gotta earn it. Yep.
And it just so happens that, my values and my outlook lines up probably 99.9% with the Republican Party. But you still got to earn my vote. You've got to convince me.
Yeah.
Because, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even people who go into politics with the best of intentions, they can be steered astray. How do you explain somebody like that brainiac AOC? She was a bartender. And now she's a multimillionaire, in which she's been.
How does that work, man?
3 years in Congress, and she's a multimillionaire?
How does that work? That has always baffled me.
Nancy Pelosi made millions and millions and millions. If any one of us three
did what she did, we'd be in jail.
We'd be producing this from prison.
Right.
On a, with a pad and paper.
Yeah, but they're allowed to have insider trading in Congress.
Which is disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. But her husband, on the other hand, he's like this antique. He's got this antique dealership thing where he imports stuff from Europe. And how do I know? I went to college with his accountant. But
so in the rest of the world, if your last name is not Pelosi, they call that money laundering.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Or they call it a fence operation or something,
Which is probably what it is.
And the thing is, we all know it's happening. At least the ones paying attention. And even the ones that probably aren't paying attention, they know it's happening. They just don't want to
see it.
And I think, just so you know, we kind of started this off. We decided we were just going to go into it. Derin, he's been, we've been talking about having him on here for quite a while. And we're like, we've talked personally, and we decided tonight was going to be the night. So.
And he's our first guest ever.
Yes, first guest ever.
So and I'm honored to be so.
And he's killing it.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah, he is. I don't know. I don't even know if we're going to have a job after this.
Yeah, right.
He may be his crew.
Everybody always told me I have a face and a voice for radio.
Yeah, but we decided to go right into it. And so based on, what I was getting at is, we kind of know what's happening. Like your feelings of they can't actually feel that way. Like we always have that, as far as conservatives, I think we always have that hope that they're not really that. They don't really think it. They have to be lying, or somebody's making them say that, or it was just the way they were taught. It's not really from their soul.
Yeah, it is.
How they feel.
I'm sorry, it is. They want us dead.
Right. And that's what I was getting to. And, probably many of the shows start off with this, but we decided we're going to go, get your background and do all this stuff. But leading into, from what you said, what happened to Charlie Kirk and the days after that, the people are waking up.
I hope so.
To the fact that, yes,
they want us dead.
There's people out there and there's many people out there that are just, they will not change.
So if I can inject just one quick thing, is I used to think exactly what you just said, is they don't really think that way.
No, I mean,
but now, especially now after the events of September 10th, I think now I think of it more as it's a defense mechanism. It's not that I don't believe that it's our defense, and more on that as we delve into this conversation. But I really think it's more of a defense mechanism. We're trying to convince ourselves.
Right.
Nobody could be that twisted in their mind.
But yeah, they are.
And they are. And the amazing thing is, there's somewhere out there, there's a bizarro world and an alternate universe where there's a Podpinions going on, and 3 very staunch liberals are saying the exact same thing about how we think.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just that they think that way.
They believe it.
They are immovable from
see,
that.
The difference being, and I'm speaking for me, this is my Podpinion. We've had this discussion before about the musicians and all that, and I'm kind of like an anomaly, be a conservative in the music industry.
Unicorn.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So, you guys, do I look like a unicorn? So, but now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, musician.
That's all right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, some of these musicians, I mean, they believe it so much. They call for Trump's death, for his extermination, that people like me, you should be shot, and here Charlie got shot, 2 days ago, but I never think that way.
No, I know.
I mean, I don't agree with them, Have your opinion. You know what I mean? I had a conversation with a trumpet player friend of mine the other day, and something came up, and I said, no, I'm not playing there. And it was at this jazz festival. And I said, no, I'm not welcome. Well, why not? I said, well, because I'm a conservative. And when I stopped playing 10 years ago, I had this weird ear thing going on. So I couldn't play. So I started playing again, right? But during that 10-year hiatus from the horn, I came out of the closet as a conservative, and these people lost their shit. I mean, serious. I mean, screaming at me, yelling at me, you name the name, and I was called it, right? So I said, I'm not welcome there. Like, I'm kind of banished, you know? And she said, well, I'm a liberal. I said, no, you're not. You're like down the middle of the road. I said, you don't want me dead. You allow people to have their own opinion, right? I said, you're right down the middle. I said, I don't care what you think. You could like, green hair and whatever you want to do. I don't care. That's your thing. But don't tell me I'm wrong for my beliefs. And if I don't go along with yours, then I'm some kind of asshole that should be exterminated. Mm-hmm. That's where it's at, and she didn't believe me. And then this happened, and I texted her and I said, what we were talking about the other day, that's what I'm talking about right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it. Yep.
And the problem is, until this point, unfortunately, if anything good can come out of this, I guess, is that now I'm done. Like, I understand. I'm not going to try to talk to you as far as push you. If you guys want to talk to me, we'll have a debate, whatever. But I'm not going to automatically think that, well, even if I just say it this way, or if I'm going to strike a chord with you, because I don't believe we're going to do that.
What? No. Like no more Mr. Nice Guy kind of thing? What are you talking about?
Not necessarily no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm just done. I've wasted all my life.
You mean trying to convince them?
Trying to convince myself that I can help perpetuate
they don't
change
want to.
in their
They don't
beliefs.
care. They don't care, Bruce.
I don't have a problem listening to the sides of transgender and homosexual and lesbian. I don't have a problem listening about why they believe that or why they like. Okay,
just leave me alone. Right,
but we can have a conversation about that. That's different from, you see the people online now dancing and screaming and celebrating because somebody shot Charlie Kirk dead.
That's disgusting.
Disgusting.
Demonic as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Look what Ilhan Omar said, Yeah. Did you see it?
I didn't see what she said. I had to turn a lot of that stuff off because I was afraid I was going to start going on a rampage that was going to end with me in a federal prison. So I got to the point where I knew that it was coming. I knew that there were going to be people that were celebrating.
I think we all did. I mean, I saw this coming a long time ago.
Until you actually, how can you take the example of Charlie Kirk? All he wanted to do is build a business, be with his family. He actually gave a platform for anybody to be able to speak. Didn't matter what your beliefs are, where you came from, how much money you had. You could dress up however you were, come to his rallies, and he gave you a microphone to speak. How do you justify eliminating and celebrating somebody like that when a week ago you're on your podcast or you're on your phone saying how you're scared that the president's going to take away everybody's democracy and freedoms?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
It doesn't get any more American than what Charlie Kirk was doing. It epitomizes the entire idea of what we as a country are supposed to be. And to be quite frank, I think a lot of the seasoned politicians should have been taking a page out of his book.
Absolutely.
Because he was, like you said, and I'm sorry to cut in.
No, absolutely.
But he was providing a platform for anybody with an opinion, or a podpinion, as it were, to make that opinion known, to speak it, and then to defend it. And they killed him for it. They killed him they killed the only guy who was doing the right thing. And I think it's go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. We've talked about it, or you've mentioned it a couple times before. Like, you wish you could go back to the times where we actually had conversations.
Yeah.
And he was that time.
Yeah.
But what are they so afraid of that they tried to kill Trump? They killed him.
They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of losing what they have built on, excuse my French, bullshit.
God forbid he said a bad word.
I didn't say frickin'.
Yeah, oh, you just wrecked it, man. You were on a streak here.
Yeah. But they've built everything that their kingdom upon crap, and it's the emperor's new clothes. They don't have a platform. They don't have anything that people will actually benefit from. They take everything from anybody else to support themselves, and if that ever got out, they would be no longer in power and control. They'd be broke. And that's all they live for.
They built a kingdom of crap.
Yeah.
And then insist that everyone else take a bite of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't do that. I mean, to me, it's like right here, you know, and to you, it's like, so that's my other question. Bruce and I discuss this all the time and see what you have to say about it. To me, it's like right there. How come we can see it, but they can't? Or don't they want to see it?
My short answer to that is I really, this is going to sound ridiculous, and I am in no way qualified to make any kind of a medical diagnosis or anything like that.
You never even played a doctor on TV.
I'm not a doctor, and I've never played one on TV. But you know, having worked patrol in my career, I've come across some mentally ill people. And I do believe, and there are studies out there that show that there is a direct correlation between the people who think that way and the rate of mental illness. And, you know, I always said as a joke, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean that they're not out to get me.
Do you know what reverse paranoia is?
What's that?
That's when you think you're following someone.
I think I'm following them. I don't know if I am or not. But, you know, but I say that to say that, you know, there are studies out there, and I can't name them. I don't have the figures in front of me. But they do these researches, and I just saw this earlier today, and like I said, I just kind of blanked out right before you know the recording started. But there is a direct correlation between mental illness and people who are believing this, what I'll call Democrat doctrine, because we really are along partisan lines now. You know, when I was a kid, you know, again, very quickly, just, you know, make this fast. I was in college, and it was my first election where I was of the age to vote. And it was when Bill Clinton was running against George Bush Sr. And also that was when, what was his name? I cannot remember the name of him. The third, Perot.
Ross
H.
Perot.
Ross Perot. That's it. Sorry.
That's all right.
So, I mean, that was kind of unique in our country's history too. And I remember when Bill Clinton won, I was like, you know, I'm not happy about it. But I did not have an impending sense of doom
right.
coming. You know, we're going to see some things we don't like. We're going to see some things. But the country is not going to eat itself apart. When George W. Bush won, I was glad because it wasn't the creator of the almighty internet.
Thank you, Albert. He's been practicing this.
But history, hindsight is 20/20, and history teaches, and in retrospect, George W. Bush was not the paladin in shining armor that Republicans thought he would be either.
Right.
But when Obama won, that was when I had an impending sense of doom. And that was, again, in my Podpinion, was prophetic. Because when he won, we saw the great uniter divided us more than we've ever seen before.
Oh, absolutely.
We have never been divided as a country the way we were, under Obama since
then,
the late 1860s or the mid 1860s,
you looked at the Jeffersons, Archie Bunker, we made fun of racism.
Right.
And it was all over in everybody's household.
And it was okay to laugh at it. It wasn't something, you shouldn't be laughing at that.
Right.
It was funny.
Yeah.
Even when it was pointed at you. If you can't laugh at yourself, you have no business laughing at anybody else.
Exactly.
And, I'll say that as a tribute to the late Charlie Kirk is, South Park made fun of him. And if you've seen the interviews that he did with it, he loved it.
Yeah.
He took it on the chin and he laughed about it. And in fact, he embraced it. Yeah. And, that's when you really start seeing signs of intellectual maturity is when look, he would, even the way I drink the water, but,
and interesting that I just read today and they announced in honor of Charlie Kirk's memory, they were going to remove those episodes.
Why?
Because they wanted, it was like a tribute, I guess, type. I don't know if it'll come back, but
I don't believe they should. And the reason I don't believe they should remove it and they should keep it up is because Charlie Kirk himself
would have wanted
found humor in it.
Yeah.
It was funny to him, and it didn't, and that twisted the cojones.
Oh, I'm sure. It's like, oh my God, it didn't piss him off.
He didn't freak out, yes, he took it like a man.
Yeah.
And but anyway,
but that's how we grew up.
Right. And it was okay to laugh at it. And it was funny. I'm a white kid. I grew up a white kid my whole life, believe it or not. And we would.
He would if he was on TV. He would have played one.
I would have played one too. And Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy.
Oh yeah.
Dave Chappelle. These are some of the funniest men in the history of comedy.
Absolutely.
And Dave Chappelle, he's very, very vocal.
Yeah.
He is certainly not politically aligned with my beliefs, but it doesn't make him not funny.
Right.
And he's also, and in my opinion, the man is brilliant because he knows exactly what to say to make his stance known. But
to make everybody laugh.
And he makes everybody laugh. And I've never heard him wish harm on anyone.
Right.
He wants to poke fun. Cool. You're the butt of the joke today.
Yeah.
It's everybody's turn in the barrel one day.
Absolutely.
But then you have this animal that shot Charlie Kirk. And there is one of the phrases that I learned. The weak arm themselves with revenge. The righteous arm themselves with justice. And there is no justice out there big enough to account for this.
Right.
And that's how I feel about it. And I never met the man. I did not know the man. Right. I was a fan. I didn't agree with everything that he said. I am not a particularly pious or religious person. I do believe in God. I do believe that, that he exists. And I do believe that there is an almighty power out there. But I would say I'm more of an agnostic than anything else. But I don't begrudge anybody for their personal religious beliefs. But, he would sometimes go on, and it was evident that, his faith in Jesus Christ was very strong.
He was talking about it right before he got shot.
Yeah. He so I always kind of felt that's a little bit preachy, but
that's his thing.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that most religions, not going to say all of them, but most religions, you don't have to go to church, go to temple, go to a mosque. All you've got to do is be a good person.
Right.
Being a good person is universal. Don't steal from people.
Right.
Don't hurt people. Mind your own effing business.
Yep.
And you live your life and let people live theirs.
Right.
And
Yes, but these people want us to live like them.
that's the problem, is they don't subscribe to that doctrine.
I just want to be left alone.
Exactly, but that's not good enough
Right.
for them. If you don't think like me,
Yeah, I'm a piece of crap.
then you're the problem.
Right.
You're what's wrong with this country.
Absolutely.
And that's probably maybe part of the answer is like, you know, from the top down, that's how they've been trained. So the top has all this under them. So they just take that as the example of, you know, I have to have my underlings under me. And that's how it just spreads, and everybody has to do what they say or else. The problem is, and also the defense mechanism is probably because I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone.
Leave me out of it.
I wasn't like this 12 years ago. I didn't want to listen to politics. I didn't want to get involved with all the dirt and the nonsense.
Well,
because
so
I knew
that-
politics was
Yes, but that's part of the problem too.
that is, but
is that you didn't get involved.
and that's what I'm saying, because I didn't want to believe that people were that bad.
but they are.
I know they are now. I've seen it, and I've seen it.
No, see, but
I've seen it.
you used it in the right context.
Yes, I know. I know. It was a nudge. A nudge.
It was funny. I got it.
Yeah. All right. But, you know, it's like if I really believed it, then I don't know at the time, you know, you're trying to raise a family or work or build a career or whatever, you know, is it a hindrance? Is it going to make you not as happy, not as, you know, that's what maybe I felt, where I should have been feeling, no, I'm not going to let this take me over. No.
Well, that's part of the problem is
And-
conservative people just kind of like stand back and think, oh, this will just
Yeah,
fix
turn the other
itself.
cheek.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not.
No.
And I think it's fair to say, at least this is my take on it, these people are hunting us now. And they're doing it because they're getting away with it. They have seen that, and I know this wasn't really in the topic of discussion what
No.
we were planning on talking about, but you know, a couple of weeks ago, that poor girl that got
Oh,
murdered.
yeah.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And those people sat there and didn't do anything.
And I mean, the defense, if there is one, is look what happened to Daniel Penny.
Yes.
They may have been sitting there, just to give a slight benefit of the doubt, they may have been sitting there, I can involve myself in this and end up spending the next year of my life having to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars that I don't have and have no means to pay back. I'm riding public transportation. The reality of the situation is if you're riding public transportation, you probably don't have the money for $100,000
Right.
worth of defense.
Legal bills. Yeah.
And or I can just get up and walk away.
The poor girl was dying.
But I'll guarantee you there were people on that train who took their phones out and started recording it.
Well, you saw that.
And-
You saw the recording.
and you
with the
see
Was
that-
camera.
yeah, but was that from a
That was a
camera in the
yes.
train?
But there were other people
Yeah, there were
recording
other
it with
people.
their
See, that's
phones
sick.
too. Yeah, but instead of using the phone for its intended purpose and
Like call
calling for help-
911.
Yeah, no, it's because attention's a hell of a drug.
They're attention whores. That's what I call them.
I got to be the one that put it out there. I got
Yeah, but
my phone called
the
it.
poor woman died.
She died. She died horribly
And what was that guy
And
even
innocent.
doing it out on the
And
street?
innocent. I mean,
with
she
the
had
look of
no-
horror
right.
on her face.
Right.
You
With the
know,
world watching.
Yeah.
What I can't believe is that scumbag actually was let out 14 times.
Well, we were talking about this a little earlier. You know, you asked me, you know, I was talking about the difference between I was doing the bare minimum, and it made my commanding officer sign that letter of recommendation, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this. The senior cops that had just given up on doing that, that's why. Because that guy had been arrested at least, I believe the number's 14 times, 13 or 14 times.
Yeah, but what about the judges that let them out?
That's the problem. At some point as a cop, and I went through this myself towards the end of my career, at what point is it worth putting handcuffs on that guy when you have a scumbag and scumbag like Alvin Bragg, and I'm talking to you, Mr. Bragg, when you have a guy like that that lets everybody out if you're the right color or the right religion. In other words, I'm just going to blatantly say it. If you're not white, you didn't do it. And it gets exhausting thinking, I'm going to put handcuffs on this guy who just beat up his wife or committed some kind of horrible crime. And they're more interested in looking to lock me up for it. They are scrutinizing. They have teams of New York City police employees, supervisors, whose only job it is to review your body camera footage. And you might have just stopped a guy from committing a school shooting, but you dropped an expletive. You know that clip with Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah. Insert that here. He just said the F word. He's not allowed to say that. And now the entire job becomes about how you were out of line. And make no mistake, there will be advocates for that perp that will say that police officer abused him verbally by saying that. And then all of a sudden you find yourself with a civilian complaint.
Are you serious?
Oh, I'm 100% serious.
Wow.
If you want to laugh.
I don't, this is like not laughing materially here.
No, but if you want to, if you don't laugh, you cry.
I know what you mean.
But if you want to laugh in disgust, I guess is the best way to put it, is go on to the New York City's Civilian Complaint Review Board website and read all it takes in order to file a complaint against a police officer. It doesn't even have to be founded. And it will make an impact on that cop's career.
That's crazy.
Even if it's unfounded. It doesn't matter. It's on
the record.
It's on the record.
That's crazy.
But
so in other words, I could drive into Midtown Manhattan and some traffic cop, I don't like the way he's directing traffic. I could file a complaint.
Yes.
And it'll be on his record, even if it's unfounded. Unbelievable.
That's nuts.
Yep. It'll be on there.
That's absolutely crazy.
And they do. And there's people who do.
They probably make a job out of it.
Well, yeah, you have your
hobby
social justice warriors that go out there and they get their cameras and they want to film cops parking illegally because you end up going to a job. They have no idea what the job is you're responding to. It might have been a knife run, a gun, a gun run, something like that. You show up and you've parked your car tactically, to make sure you're not blocked in and you're not blocking responding units in case this is real and you end up in a gun battle, and look at the way this cop parked. He's parked in the bike lane and then what do? They forward it to the mayor's office. What does the mayor do? Now, this really started with Bill de Blasio. And it's continued on even with Eric Adams, because no matter what Eric Adams says, he was a New York City cop. He was never a cop. He was in it for himself. We're talking about a man who admittedly said that his mission and his goal was to change the department from within. Right. Which means that he had a loathing for the department. But I've kind of digressed from what we were talking about.
No. This is what we do here.
No, I know. I don't want to take away from the focus of the huge loss that the country has suffered.
No, we'll get to it.
But
this is fascinating to me.
I feel like I'm trying kind of making it about me, and I don't want to make it about
Well, you're our guest, so it is about you.
Exactly.
But anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Wow, it just angers me.
That, I guess, standard, if you want to even call it a standard, that's what's kind of progressed across our country of, well, you know, if you do something even a little wrong, everybody pounces on you. And everybody was afraid. Conservatives were afraid, let's face it. I think before Trump, if Hillary had gotten in, I can tell you, I was not going to feel safe. If Trump hadn't gotten in, and then when Biden got in, I didn't necessarily feel unsafe, but I knew we were going in the wrong direction.
Doomed.
Yeah, but I have to interject. I really think that we had to go through the Biden years.
Yes. Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I'm not
so
saying,
then people could actually see what was going on. Right. Because now, I mean, Trump really looks tired. I mean, he looks exhausted. But the lefties are saying, well, his ankles are swollen. He's got this going on. It's his heart problem. I hope he drops dead and dies. That's what I've been reading and hearing from people. You know, they think that he's got like congestive heart failure or something. Maybe he does. I don't know. But we had to go through that Biden nonsense to see how good we really do have it now. You know,
but what I was saying was like I didn't feel necessary. I thought the country was going to be doomed as far as the direction we were going. But I had hoped that enough people woke up during the first Trump administration that we would not quite get that far. And thank goodness that 2024 came around and Biden's administration did everything that they did, that we were able to change this. But had this happened to Charlie Kirk during the Biden administration?
Nothing.
Can you even imagine?
We would have even heard about it.
Right.
I mean, it's
don't
disgusting.
Get me wrong. I'm not saying that it should have happened at all. But at this point in time, unfortunately, this tragedy happened. We can't change it. And if you believe destiny or whatever you want to, however you want to praise it, we got to this point through this period. It's going to unify the country even more.
Or is it going to divide it more?
No. We're already divided. In my opinion, Podpinion, we're divided and we're not coming together.
I agree with that.
That's where I'm at. We are, and I've said it the last couple of years, there is no getting us together. I do not believe in communism. I do not believe in socialism. I do not believe in Marxism. And I'm not going that way.
I'm not either.
So if you believe that and that's your life, we're not going to get along.
Nope. And I'm not willing to compromise. I don't even want to vote for a politician that wants to say, I want to reach across the aisle and work. But no, I am not willing to give up one more centimeter of ground to these people.
That does not mean I want to go out and wipe them all out. What I mean is you and me, we're not getting along, but I'm going to be the victor here. You're not taking my country. So we will do this my way, our way. And this thing that happened with Charlie Kirk, this tragedy, I think is going to be the spark that hopefully enough people remember in 3 weeks from now, because everybody forgets and moves on to the next thing, that this is going to push the country in the direction we need to go. And it means the British Army was the most powerful thing in the world. And they controlled this country. And there was a point where the citizens under their rule said,
yeah, enough's enough.
Enough's enough.
It's time.
It's time.
And I really believe that we've reached the tipping point. I am convinced in my heart of hearts, and I don't like saying this country is headed for an armed conflict amongst itself. We are headed for a second, either whatever you want to call it, another revolution or another civil war. I do believe it's coming. I do believe that it's a powder keg and somebody's holding the match right above it.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's going to be really telling depending on what happens with the next election.
Well, what's interesting is that what I've been hearing on like watching TV or on social media is people are blaming Trump for this.
Yeah.
Which blows my mind because they're the ones all these years
Defense
have been
mechanisms.
Right. But I mean, just go back to the George Floyd thing, right? How many did we, Charlie get shot? Did we go riot, burn, loot?
No.
Pillage? You know, no. Everybody had held like prayer vigils. But during that George Floyd thing, the summer of love, right, where they were burning Portland and all these different cities to the ground.
Minneapolis.
Yeah. Which
Seattle.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And then they're saying it's Trump's fault?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Right.
Please explain it to me.
They view that as a weakness. If we're not losing our minds and burning the cities to the ground.
Yeah, but
they look at that as a weakness that they can exploit.
This first thing,
we're not weak.
No,
we want to be left alone, but if you push us to this point, and it doesn't have to be guns ablazing.
No,
we will conquer you, and there
hopefully
is
at the ballot
not
box.
Going to be any
hopefully.
Well, ballot box, you got to go school board, you got to go HOAs.
Well, that's what you're talking about in your little
dog
your short.
Yeah. So that's where the point is. Now, obviously, if they want to put together some kind of army or whatever, and
yeah,
that's
good luck with that
story. None of us are going to
stand by and watch.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
But that's not who we are. We want to live our lives and be left alone. And now you're starting to kill one of us and many of us, and we're done.
It's not who we are, but at the same time, and I know this sounds silly, it is exactly who we are.
Right.
Or at least it's exactly who we can be.
Right.
And I don't think that the left understands or even remotely appreciates the amount of restraint that the right has
it's
shown.
unbelievable. I mean, inside, my first reaction was absolute horror when I saw what happened. You know, I watched the video and it's like, oh my God. And the minute I saw it, it's like, there's no way this guy's surviving. I mean, he was dead before he hit the ground.
Yeah.
And, but now I'm like raging inside. But
no, but it's, you have to get, unfortunately, we had to go through Biden to get to this point, and Trump is making decisions that he wouldn't or couldn't have made the second term if he had gotten elected instead of Biden.
Exactly.
So at this point now, the country has to we just have to take our country back, and that's it. And we're going to do it for Charlie, or however you want to phrase it, but you cannot, we have our values, we have our beliefs. You're welcome to yours, and I full-heartedly believe that, and you can speak that, but we're running the country this way. We're a constitutional republic. Everybody has rights, including me, and I'm tired of laying down or playing dead or whatever you want to say.
Well, that's the whole problem, Bruce.
Hoping that they get it.
They're never going to get it. They're never going to get it. They don't want to get it, and I'm sick and tired of keeping my mouth shut.
Well, that's why we started this.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about it, and it's like we talk about this all the time, and we said, let's try a podcast,
And here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comments below, please.
Yes.
But getting back to this Charlie Kirk thing, this kid, now, when I first saw it, I was thinking this had to be like a professional hit. I mean, it looked like it, right?
At first it did.
And then when I saw the gun, it's like, you got to be kidding me. A sporterized Mauser, it's like a hunting rifle, basically. After World War II, all these German Mausers and even our military guns, they didn't think they were worth anything. Now they're like worth $1 zillion on the collector market. But they would sporterize them, cut the stocks, cut the barrels, make hunting rifles out of them. So that's what this was. It was a sporterized Mauser, but it was rechambered to .30-06. They usually were 8 millimeter, and So I was kind of like, wait a minute, a professional hitman wouldn't be using a sporterized Mauser. You know, they would use like a regular, like a 338 Lapua or, something like that. And then the video came out from TMZ. And what I really thought was odd was, I don't know if you saw it. You really have been watching the news at all, right?
Not the mainstream media. Right. I've given up on the mainstream media. But
they were showing the videos of this kid like running through the township and, through this neighborhood or whatever. And then they had this press conference the other night, and Kash Patel and Bongino show up and never said a word. But Patel looked really uncomfortable and nervous. And the next morning, today, boom, Trump comes on Fox and Friends and says they got him. So did they get him last night and just didn't say anything? I mean, how does that work?
Well, I know Charlie and Kash, they knew each other pretty well.
Right.
So,
they were very good friends. I mean, granted, the guy's upset.
Right. So I don't know whether that had any influence in it. But as far as an investigation, you'd probably be the one to say, did he, if it was ongoing, they didn't catch him, or he didn't turn himself in yet, or they knew, because apparently, I guess the dad somehow was affiliated with the sheriff's department there.
I think he was a 27-year veteran or retired after 27 years or so. That's
from the sheriff's department?
I think so. I read that. I can't confirm that.
So he was in law enforcement.
He was involved in law enforcement in some way, shape,
right.
Yeah.
And he's the one that turned him in.
Yeah. Which, in reality, I think he told his son, if law enforcement doesn't kill you, the mobs are going to find you and they're going to kill you. Your only shot at living is going to be to turn yourself in. I don't think his father turned him in to do the right thing. I think his father turned him in out of fear that somebody was going to take his son out. And,
but as far as him being able to comment on, more details, do you think that was
last night you're talking about?
Like, because it's an ongoing investigation, they don't want to tip anybody off. They're checking or still investigating stuff. Or
so my take on that is this: immediately when it happened, they grabbed the suspect and they immediately put suspect in custody. Mm-hmm. Then there was a second suspect,
and the guy looked like Larry David.
Yeah, and it turns out neither one of them were the shooter. They were agitators. They were degenerates. They were scumbags. Whatever insert
now,
whatever
do you
want.
think they were red herrings?
I don't think they were smart enough for that.
Okay.
I don't think that they were decoys. I don't think they were. I just think that they were disgusting individuals that among some
attention whores.
Yeah, among some of the other people celebrating this were
because the one guy was screaming, shoot him again, or something like that.
Yeah. It's but at the end of the day, they were very, very quick. The news was very quick to announce, no, we got, and then you know how the court of public opinion is. Oh, they got him. They got him. And now fry that guy or this or that. Hang him up from hang him from the yard arm, I think they wanted to be certain.
Right.
And get all of their, they wanted to dot all their I's and cross all their T's before they came out again and said, no, now we got him.
Right.
Because, I mean,
the first two were obviously.
The odds are this is the shooter. Mm-hmm. I don't think they would have announced it as adamantly as they did. The president of the United States of America made the announcement.
Right, this morning.
So I think they just wanted to be certain.
Right.
And, I did not know that Kash Patel and Charlie Kirk had a personal friendship. Mm. I can tell you right now, if there was somebody that I was friends with that happened to, I would not be my normal self either. Mm.
Yeah, so he just acted off last night.
I'm willing to give him a pass on that, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. Well, you're the head of the FBI. You have to be above your emotion. No, you don't.
Yeah, right.
No, you don't.
You're
I think that the entire country should be mourning right now.
Absolutely.
Even if you didn't like Charlie Kirk, you should be mourning at what a horrible, horrible example we've just set to the rest of the world, because we as Americans, all growing up through the 80s, during the Eastern Bloc, the Soviet era, and all of that, we don't do this to our own people. We're better because we don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are. This is Banana Republic crap.
Right.
Absolutely.
This is what they do on unnamed islands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, cannibals treat each other with better courtesy than this, you know? And I hate using this word now after the Queen of the Witches has used it, but it's deplorable behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these idiots that are making these celebratory videos, I think they are the worst of what the United States has to offer.
That blows my mind that these
And-
people are like celebrating the fact that this guy got shot.
The saddest part about that is I got woken up. I was taking a nap. And a buddy of mine that I'm in a group text with is a friend of mine that I retired from the NYPD with. He was in the Aviation Unit with me. It was a text that said something along the lines of, you know, them shooting Charlie Kirk, they have no idea what they've done, you know. And I was still groggy, and I was like, what? And you know, I literally typed what, you know, like, what are you talking about? You know, because it was kind of written in a way that he expected we already knew.
Right.
And I didn't. And then he sends me the video. And it wasn't the video from far away. It was
a close-up
It was
on it.
the video. And again, talking about defense mechanisms, I saw the video and I said, that's AI. You know, I mean, they're doing amazing things with AI now. And I was like, that's AI. That's somebody trying to troll or clown. My brain didn't allow me to process that could possibly be real. And sure enough, it was real. Yeah. And I texted, I said, is this real? Did this real? And he said just one word, yup. And the first thing I thought is, my God, you know, how could this happen to this guy?
Right.
And then the next thing in my mind, and I kid you not, tomorrow, people are going to have posted videos of them celebrating and dancing about it, and it's going to want to make me go out and punch every one of them in the face. And I'll do a few days in jail just to punch you in the face. But it's a misdemeanor. But yeah, it's embarrassing. And when you're a parent and you're trying to do the right thing and teach your children to do the right thing and how just to be better. And I am
that's who was there, children.
Right. I am not a monument to morality. I don't sit here in front of you from an ivory tower and tell you that I have lived a perfectly pious life and I'm the example. No, not me. But I at least know right from wrong. And the example to that is, I think it was about a year ago. I mean, time flies, you know, as we get older. You know,
right.
Time goes
Tell
a
me
lot
about
faster.
it.
But when Governor Shapiro, who I do not like, I have no respect for him. I do not like him. I want him voted out, but I don't hate him.
Right.
When somebody broke into his home
exactly.
and burned his home with his family and his children inside that home, I was mortified. I was ready to, I said, please let this guy come to this part of Pennsylvania so I can find him, so I can do the right thing here. Because sometimes doing the right thing isn't really doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And not all justice is dispensed in a courtroom, but which is a terrible thing for a former cop to say. But we all know the reality.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here. But it's my Podpinion.
Right.
So, I do not represent the New York City Police Department in my Podpinions. But I was incensed that somebody would do that. And again, I immediately thought, please don't let it have been one of us. And sure enough, it was one of his own.
Right.
Which is really bizarre. And the guy
But it's really not. They're sick.
Yeah, mental illness.
Yeah, they're nuts. But I was mortified at that. And then I look at these savages cheering. I mean, people, even if you wanted to break it down and say, I don't feel sorry for Charlie Kirk. He said things. He knew the direction that he was going in, like that idiot from MSNBC said.
Well, he got fired.
They'll hire him back by the end of the week or by the beginning of next week. That's how they do things over there. But he said he knew what he was saying. He knew what he was getting. Even if you want it, just for the sake of argument, let's say, okay, he's disparaging Charlie. You had people going on there saying, I don't feel sorry for his kids. I don't feel sorry for his wife. That's a person that I will say a little prayer tonight, as politically incorrect and as, I don't want to alienate your viewers. Those are people who deserve to choke on dinner tonight. They deserve to choke on their dinner tonight for saying that about children. And
no, it's we've had that all throughout history, I guess. But now it seems like it's taught.
Exactly. I mean, that from your lips to God's ears.
Mentality is taught. And I don't think that...
That's the guy right there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Bruce. Nate Burleson.
Right.
He was the one from... he was a former NFL wide receiver. Suggested that Turning Point USA founder's words were offensive to specific communities. So he's the one that got axed.
And Nate, if you're watching this, you're a scumbag.
Right. And then, and then Ilhan Omar with her comments.
Yeah.
But nobody's calling him out on it.
See, I do believe they think, again, they believe they're in charge. They have control of us. And I believe they want us to react and start something so that they can come in and put their thumb down and take control of us. It's not going to happen.
Right.
They should be careful what they wish for.
Exactly. And if they really stopped and talked to people and learned people, like, I know more about them because I'm interested in what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. So I have a lot better understanding of what makes them tick than they know what makes me tick.
But they think they know what makes us tick.
Right.
Well, they know everything.
Well, they think we think like them. You know what I mean? Not the same things, but they think our mind processes like them. And it doesn't.
No, not at all.
So when you have that mentality of, well, it's just, I think it's red and you think it's green, but we think the same, and it's actually blue. Well, we're thinking the same way. And I'm telling you, no, it's blue. I'm telling you it's blue. And if they don't process that correctly, which they don't, they have no understanding of who we actually are. And we are just as human, just as emotional, I guess you would say. But we have a way of keeping those emotions in check for the most part.
But it's getting harder and harder to keep those emotions in check.
Well, that's what they don't understand.
Yeah, and they don't realize the floodgate that they can potentially unleash here. They don't, I said it before, they don't comprehend the amount of restraint that conservatives have had in not taking certain actions sooner. Because we're human beings and we understand we live in a nation of laws and that there's a process for things. And we're also talking about a group of people when they make their arguments, just like when Charlie Kirk would make his debates, he debated based off of facts. They debate off of emotion.
Right.
And they're just not capable of understanding. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that there are some very, very sharp, bright Democrats out there. And I believe in my heart of hearts that those Democrats are mortified over this.
Yeah,
probably.
And I have seen, to be fair to those of you out there, I have seen some videos of people who are clearly on the left saying that this is not what they signed on to, and this is not what they believe, and people will say, I hated that man. But he did not deserve this. His children did not deserve this. So I don't want to throw shade at the whole.
No, absolutely, you can't. Right.
But so it does need to be said that there are Democrats out there that wholeheartedly disagree with what happened.
But those people, I think, are being shunned by the far, far left.
I believe you're right.
You know what I mean? It's like how did the Jasmine Crockett's of the world come into being? You know what I mean? Especially in a red state.
Somebody voted.
Speaking of which, she's in deep doo-doo.
What'd she do?
Well, what she did was...
What'd she do?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, right.
You seen it?
So she actually came out and she said that this woman, Kayla Hamilton, who's 20 years old, was sexually assaulted and restrained and strangled to death by an illegal alien, right? And she came out and said, you take a situation and then you exploit what has happened to not only that person, but you exploit those families and you make it a game, Crockett shouted during a committee debate, right? Stop just throwing a random dead person's name on something for your own political expediency. And she's still in Congress.
See, the thing is, September 9th, that would have stuck after September 10th.
Yeah, right. But she should be done. They should throw her out.
Well, everybody's going to vote her out, and that's what has to happen.
I mean, she's done anyhow because they redistrict Texas.
No, but
and
I'm saying
she'll be
don't
out.
let her allowed to move to a different state, location, district, whatever. She's got to be.
I mean, the woman's nuts.
Anywhere she shows up, it has to be.
And then a FEMA employee, I mean, all these people, this is people in government are actually rejoicing in this Charlie Kirk thing.
And speaking of voting, if you're not registered to vote, especially after what happened to Charlie Kirk, Charlie can't vote anymore. We all got to do it. We all got to get this country back. Go register tomorrow. It's not that hard. It takes what? 20 minutes?
Maybe. Yeah.
Find Scott Pressler. He's at all these fairs. He'll sign you right up there. Go register to vote and go out and vote. It's not scary. It's easy. You color a circle.
Stop hitting the snooze button.
Right.
If you don't do it now, there may not be a tomorrow to do it. You got to do it now.
I mean, how many people that we know don't vote?
Yeah, well, we've talked about it with the hunters.
The hunters.
Yeah.
Hunters in Pennsylvania don't vote.
No, I know. And
which makes no sense to me at all. Excuse me. I'm frog in my throat. Then a FEMA employee got placed on leave. Now, why this person didn't get fired is beyond me, right? They put him on leave. So he is all upset because Trump signed an executive order having all the flags in the United States at half-mast for Charlie Kirk. So he's called him a racist, homophobic, blah, 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 right? So Kristi Noem placed this guy on federal leave. He's a Federal Emergency Management Agency employee on administrative leave. See, he's still getting paid, though. Mm-hmm. That's what pisses me off. These people should get fired. Mm-hmm. No unemployment, no nothing. Get out now. I mean, I got into it with a lady at the post office who works there, right? We got into this. And she said, I'm really pissed that we have to fly we got a directive from the Postmaster General. They have to fly their flags at half-mast. And she said, why? This guy wasn't an elected official. He wasn't a dignitary. I said, he was an American.
Why did they fly the flags at half-mast when Whitney Houston died?
Thank you. Mm-hmm. That's what I was just about to say.
A crackhead.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. So I don't get it. But these people should be fired.
No, absolutely. Out the door. That's it. On the good note, though, if you look on X is one thing that I go on, there is a lot of accountability being done today and yesterday for these people that have posted, and their, wives that are making fun while their husband's business, he's at his business. And I read one barbecue place, I don't remember what state it was in. He posted something, and he has a barbecue business in one of these coliseums, and they made the announcement they're no longer doing business with this barbecue place.
Good.
So it is unfortunately, it's taken something tragedy like this, and I don't want to diminish the tragedy with the Ukrainian girl that young girl
that was horrible.
Killed, because Charlie was very passionate about that as well. But all this leading up to this, I hope and pray that this is the turning point for this country and the direction it needs to go.
I hope so.
So,
well, here's another one. Top university administrator calls Charlie Kirk assassination fair due to stance on guns. So I've heard this from other people too about this gun thing. Now, I got into it with a friend of mine last night on Facebook. I don't think I told you this. Did I tell you? No.
I don't.
Or maybe I told you and I didn't tell you. So he put up a thing that there should be a gun ban, a complete gun ban, like Australia, right? Look how great it is in Australia, or Norway. But then the guy went on a rampage stabbing like how many people, right? So I said, well, you're a hunter. So you're going to give up your hunting gun? Well, no, they should ban military weapons. That's what he used. I said, he used a hunting rifle. Same as yours, well, same caliber, but so he had a Mauser, you have a Remington 700. What's the difference? It's a hunting rifle. No, it was a military, blah, blah. So what I did was I took every single gun law since 1934 with a description and a link to it at the ATF website, right? And I posted it. And I said, okay, so here are all the gun laws, 60,000 plus pages. Please read all 60,000 plus pages, and that's just federal, not including state, local, county, whatever. And then get back to me about what new law is going to change anything. Crickets. One of his friends commented about, I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's a good go-to.
Yeah, right. And,
he really got you with that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots, boy. So
Showed you.
Yeah, showed me big time. So I came back with another retort with a bunch more laws, right? Because he started about this whole assault weapon thing. And I said, well, give me a definition of an assault weapon. Like, give me the Department of Defense's definition of an assault weapon. And, of course, he didn't say anything. And I said, well, Josh Sugarman, who, if none of you know, is this anti-gun zealot from like the 80s, who coined the term assault weapon in an article that he wrote. And he did the Joseph Goebbels thing and said, if you repeat this phrase long enough, people will actually believe it. And here we are.
For those viewers, it's a pen.
He assaulted me.
I just assaulted him. This is now an assault weapon.
Right. So anyhow,
It's that easy.
it makes me nuts.
Yep.
It really makes me crazy.
Yep.
I'm losing my voice.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. I got so excited. I got to fly. Oh, man. You guys continue. I'm going to get a hot cup of hot coffee. I'll be right back.
All right.
So, I think getting back to all these comments, it's just like we're at that point in time that we just need to take our country back now.
I wholeheartedly agree. The difference is I don't like it, but I don't see, we cannot vote our way out of this. We cannot legislate our way out of this. And unfortunately, the way to take the country back is not pretty.
Well, I believe if the stance on the federal government with the illegals, for instance, the illegal aliens, getting them out of the country. Start with the really hard criminals. Get them out of here first.
Get them all out, in
Right.
my opinion. All
Right.
of them. I don't care.
Right.
Heavy
No,
criminal.
I'm just saying. But now we need accountability too. We need the example of, in other words, your analysis of it's not pretty can change if we see accountability come from these people that have put Charlie Kirk's life at being ended, with their rhetoric, with their money, with their cheating and lying. If somebody's held accountable, and I'm not talking about, the cameraman for CNN,
Yeah.
that shows the example that we are really trying as a government entity to change the country itself. And without some sort of example that way, I don't know where it's going to go in a couple of years,
And I agree with you, but the problem is, in the last election, I say we collectively, meaning the Republican side or the conservatives, got the White House, got the House, got Congress, got Senate. But the Democrats, for whatever reason, probably because of all the judges that Obama appointed and then the judges that Biden appointed, we just couldn't keep up with that influx of lower level judges. Whether we like it or not, the Democrats own the judicial system.
Right.
And interestingly enough, a lot of people think it's so funny how little people remember of history and how little they really understand about it.
Well, they don't teach it in school anymore.
Not the proper way.
Correct.
And we talk about how we have checks and balances in our government. We have an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch, and they're one's meant to balance out the other. The judicial branch was never designed to be as powerful as the executive branch.
Right.
It was never designed for that. But right now, what President Trump is trying to do,
The judicial system
we've got
is
judges
stops to it.
on essentially somewhat local levels comparatively. I mean, they're district judges,
Right.
so it's not
Right.
like the Mayberry courthouse, but on significantly lower level courts, they're stopping the most powerful man in the world from instituting policy, and in my opinion, in most cases, good policy.
Right.
No, we're just boom, stamp it, done. No, now you can't do it. And and this has been a chip on my shoulder for many years. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but perception is reality. And this is this is my perception of it. When the Republicans do something that the Democrats don't like, they get an injunction. Here it is. Boom. Got to stop doing it right now. Right now. And whatever you implemented that already took effect, now that's reversed.
Right.
But when the Democrats do something and the Republicans put an injunction on it, it seems that it doesn't stop it immediately. Right. It continues going on, and it's got to go through this court and that court and this court. And there's always going to be somebody there to stymie it or to delay it. And for some reason, it just seems like they get to do what they want, and they have the power of the judicial system that's stopping the Republicans. And it's exhausting.
Or is it that they are just going to do it anyway? In other words, they're going to keep doing what they're doing until maybe it gets to the Supreme Court, and then they're just going to do it anyway, and nobody holds them accountable.
Well, we know that that's what they're going to do, because the Supreme Court made several decisions that Joe Biden said, "I'm doing it anyway."
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, he thumbed his nose at him.
Yeah. He said, "Well, they told me I couldn't do it, but they didn't stop me."
Well, yeah, it was the
why?
school
Because
tuition thing.
Maybe
Yeah,
because we believe that the judicial system is not supposed to be as powerful as the executive branch.
Yeah, but when the Supreme Court says no and he continues to do it,
right, but
then what happens? Nothing.
I'm just saying
But what happened? Nothing.
what the defense mechanism or whatever you want to call it for conservatives, it's like, okay, well, we always kind of make an excuse for it or whatever. I maybe silently, and I'm just pulling at straws here, just trying to make sense of it. But technically that is, except for the Supreme Court, that is the way it's supposed to go. It is, for the most part, if it's within the executive branch's power.
But let's just take the Supreme Court for an example, what he was talking about. Biden, they said that the whole thing he was doing with the school loans, right? They said, no, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. And he thumbed his nose at the Supreme Court of the United States and did it anyhow. Mm-hmm. Who's going to stop him?
Right. That's my point.
Right. So
somebody should be in prison.
Right.
They said no, and he said, F you, and he just continued doing it. Right. So who's the person that is supposed to...
Nobody on the right is
doing anything. Yeah, but doesn't the Supreme Court shouldn't they have called the Department of Justice and said, hey, boom?
I don't think they...
Or how does that work?
I don't think they have the power to actually, prosecute or suggest any charges, or I'm not sure exactly on that, but
we need a lawyer. Put your comments down here. Educate us.
Well, let's look at it this way. And again, this is going to sound like I'm going off on a tangent, so I apologize.
That's okay. But that's what we do every week.
But let's take the two major incidences. And when I say that, I'm talking about George Floyd, who killed himself on a drug overdose, and Derek Chauvin is in prison unjustly. That's my Podpinion. Because when all the evidence came out, it showed he was never on his neck.
Right.
But to this day, they will still swear he killed him and he was on his neck.
No, he was on his back.
Yeah. And they showed the reverse footage that showed he was not on his neck. Mm. But anyway, I say that to say this. George Floyd, Charlie Kirk. George Floyd was a career criminal. He was a drug addict. He was a drain on society. And there was nothing redeemable about that man whatsoever. When he killed himself, the country erupted, burned down cities. There were laws written. There were signs that had to go up. Black Lives Matter. And there was an entire nationwide movement that was born out of a lie that stemmed from that. Running so deep that people were so afraid and organizations were so afraid that even an organization like the Boy Scouts of America had to create a badge specifically to try to indoctrinate young scouts into the line of thinking about how what happened to him was bad, and we need to teach you that you're bad, and really what it was, and I'm going to be quite honest here, it was a push at white guilt. Mm-hmm. And the Boy Scouts of America, not only did they create that badge, but they made it, if you want to reach the highest level of Boy Scouts to the Eagle Scout rank, which is a coveted rank, you had to have that badge. There was no getting away from it.
That's ridiculous.
That's the truth. And you can look that up on the internet.
Thank you, Al Gore. He practiced this all day.
I've been waiting for the opportunity. But so to get back what I was saying, statues were erected of this guy, of a degenerate. Charlie Kirk, the media barely covered it.
Right.
And when they did cover it, they made it out like this was his fault.
Right.
Or
Trump's fault.
Yeah. Where's the statue of Charlie Kirk?
Right. You're never going to see it.
And there's if I can name drop, I don't, another YouTuber that I happen to watch.
That's fine.
A YouTuber I happen to be a very big fan of. His name is Mark Dice. He made the recommendation that every college in the United States should have a Charlie Kirk Hall.
Absolutely.
And I actually happen to believe that. This man did more good for what the United States of America is supposed to be than any other political pundit out there.
Yep.
Whether you agreed with him or not, we're kind of going around in circles, and I'm being a little redundant.
No, but he
now.
was First Amendment all the way.
All the way. And they for exercising the right that those idiots claim. First Amendment, Trump's going to take our rights. And all the shrieking and the screaming and the clawing and hemming and hawing. And then, just hold up a mirror to them. It is really, truly amazing how ignorant these people are as to what they're saying. But George Floyd had an entire movement made after him.
Right.
What are we going to do for Charlie Kirk? And I really hope the answer is something and not burning down every Wendy's and every gas station that we see. I really hope the man's memory cannot fade away.
Exactly.
It just can't.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have failed.
Well, I heard something on the news this morning. They were talking about that Trump was talking about this on Fox. He had talked to Charlie's wife yesterday, I believe. And he said, she's absolutely she's like beyond, but, she wants to keep Turning Point alive. And there's like 1,000 employees nationwide. So they all want to do that. And then there's GoFundMe. There was a GoFundMe, but there's also some fake GoFundMes out there, just so you know.
There's a Give, Send, Go, too.
Right. Yeah. But go to the Turning Point USA website, and they've got the links to the GoFundMe, fundraisers for the family. But she wants to keep it going. So hopefully they will. So people like us have to support that organization.
Absolutely.
And I think that's how it's going to
And hopefully there's going to
out.
be more people coming out. Like I see a lot of some of the people that
Ben Shapiro
make comments.
He's another one
online that I just saw. I don't know, 9 or 12 of them. It's like, now I'm Charlie Kirk. Now I'm Charlie Kirk. And that's what we need. We need everybody to be part of this. And
just tell the truth.
Right. Exactly.
Facts. Instead of making all this crap up. Because I'm sick of it.
Yep.
I really am. I mean, I've been ostracized, I don't know how many times by people because I believe what I believe.
Yep. And they'll say whatever they want to say behind your back.
Right.
Closed doors, whatever, just to make you look bad.
I wear it like a badge of honor now. I really.
That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, right. I am unapologetic about it, and I have been for quite a while. Ever since I left the police department, because you have to be very careful what you say in the police department.
Yeah. Otherwise, you lose your job.
Yeah, and they will fire you like that. But or they'll at least make your life very miserable. But I don't. Once I retired, I realized now I can say whatever I want. And,
freedom,
and I do.
Freedom. That's why we asked him on.
But yeah, it is the irony is not lost on me how the celebrity status that this animal George Floyd, and that's what he was elevated to a deity status, and I just can't square with the idea that he will be remembered more than Charlie Kirk will. I can't. I'm not okay with that.
Right. I'm not either. Yeah. Well, any of those people. Remember the guy in Baltimore, the cop shot him? Do you remember that one?
Which one was that?
Yeah, which one? Exactly. My point.
I mean, there's been so many.
No, this was around the same time, right after George Floyd. There was a cop was in his car and a guy accosted him and the cop shot him through the window.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The cop got in trouble and they made a big thing about this guy.
Of course they did.
And thank God they had there was a body cam so you could see what was happening. But this guy was attacking the cop and the cop shot him in self-defense.
Well, in a little bit of justice and poetic, what's the word? Poetic justice, I guess. Yeah. The idiot that formed the whole hands up, don't shoot lie.
Yeah.
Was just killed by the very people that he started
I saw that now that you mention it. That is kind of funny. It's ironic.
Well, yeah. But it's
and then the I can't breathe crap.
Yeah, all of that. It's just And that became a hot topic, with us in the police department. We had to receive training. And imagine you went through the police academy. You've been taught how to physically subdue people, how to, because I'll let you in on a trade secret. When it comes to law enforcement, not everybody wants to be cuffed. Sometimes,
surprisingly,
they try not to let you.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you put your knee right there.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that, because this training, we've been taught in the academy, this is how we do it. And we actually called it, believe it or not, pain compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a violent individual and you got to get him under control, because his intention is to hurt you and then hurt other people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it became anything that can be construed to obstruct breathing or an airway. You as the police officer are going to get arrested. They didn't say you're going to get administratively punished. They said we will arrest you.
Wow.
And this is real. Look it up on the internet.
No, I believe you.
Thank you,
Al Gore.
All right, I'll stop doing it. It's just funny every time to me.
We'll play along.
Yeah.
Every single time.
We'll play along.
But
At least he didn't call it the interwebs.
Yes.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore. but yeah, I forgot where I was going with this, because now we're on the Al Gore kick.
We're on the pain.
Pain compliance. Yeah. Imagine now you've been taught that way. That's doctrine to you. And then you've got 15 years on the job, 16 years on the job. And now all of a sudden, because of this incident, you can no longer do this, or you're going to get thrown in jail. And make no mistake, that was exactly what they told us. Those exact words. They're
But
going
meanwhile,
to arrest
it's like second nature now.
And how do you unlearn that? So they sent us to training for that. And it was the most ridiculous training that you've ever seen. And it's really funny, because with a police department as big as the NYPD, there is no shortage of liberal-minded cops on the job. Eric Adams.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So the people who are teaching us these techniques, like, they're telling you, like, they're true believers. Like, they really think, no, this is going to work. And it's like, no, you have to take them by the arm, and you can only put weight on their arm or on their lower leg.
Meanwhile, the person is like trying to beat the shit out of you.
Well, what's really funny is, when you first, you're right out of this training and you're trying to do it, and the guys are laughing at you. Right. The perp is laughing at you.
Are you serious? Really?
I swear on my mother's eyes. They're laughing at us, and they're calling us names, and they're telling us, you can't touch me. You can't get me in cuffs.
So they knew already.
They knew. Remember, there are advocates who their only job is to read and interpret the new policies that the NYPD puts out, and then immediately disseminate that information to the ne'er-do-wells.
Now, is that like the ACLU, or is that
the ACLU is I can't say outright without getting risk of sued by the ACLU. So I won't say that it was actually the ACLU that does it, but it's
a group like that.
And people who would work for them, people like-minded with them.
Right.
But I can't confirm that it was the ACLU that would do it, but that is the kind of thing that they would do, because
mentality of.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's the word I'm looking for.
Wow. So the perps would actually sit there and laugh at you.
They would laugh at us. They laughed at us. And you can't take me. You can't touch me. And it just, so now we have to make a decision. I either put my elbow or my knee on this guy's back to get him from, to get his arms behind his back, and risk going to jail, lose my pension, lose my ability to feed my family, lose my house, lose all of that, or let him go.
Yeah. So you guys would let him go.
Let him go. I mean, and the childish, I don't want to say childish because it's not really childish, but the defeatist, that's really the better word. The defeatist attitude that we started to accept is, look, we're going to let this guy go because that's what you voted for, the people of New York City. But the reality of the situation is not everybody in New York City voted for that.
Right.
And those people deserve better than cops saying, just let them go.
Right.
But it becomes very scary when you realize
You could lose everything.
forget about losing your job. I may go to jail
Right.
for this. And anybody out there in the comments section that thinks I'm being hyperbolic, you either are a lefty or you've never strapped on a uniform and a gun and a shield or worked any job that you have to do where you wear a gun and a shield just to do the basic functions of your job. And you have no idea what it's like to be a police officer, because anybody out there that's watching that either is or was a police officer knows that every word I'm saying right now is the God's honest truth.
I think I told you about my friend. He's a cop around here, and he pulled over. He was working a night shift, and he pulled over a car at 2:00 in the morning full of illegal aliens. 6 people from Venezuela, actually, right? No ID. Not one of them would speak English. Not that they couldn't; they just refused to, or played that they couldn't. And they
They're
had
probably all good dads.
yeah, right. And so, and then they found drugs in a car, stolen car.
No,
Yeah, God forbid.
I don't believe a word of it.
Right. Anyhow, so he calls for backup. They impound the car. They arrest these 6 guys. They take them to the county lockup. The magistrate let them out under their own recognizance the next morning. And he said, "Why am I doing this? Like, why?"
That's that defeatist attitude that starts to creep in.
But he's fighting that.
And it's not just the defeatist attitude; it's self-preservation
Right.
for your career.
Well, they're going.
Yeah.
I just talked to him recently, and he and his partner, they're going to this training. It's like a week long, 8 hours a day of like what you were talking about with the verbiage. You have to call it something else than what it really is. And he said, "This is the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard in my life."
verbal judo.
Yeah, right. He said it's ridiculous. It's like you can't call somebody a drug addict anymore.
Yeah.
You have to call them like, chemically dependent or something stupid,
Food insecure.
Right. That's what this whole class, next time you see, who I'm talking about. Next time you see him, ask him about it. I mean, we were cracking up the other day, but he said it is so absurd. And the two of them are just sitting in this class going like, I can't wait to get out of here. 8 hours of this nonsense every day for a week.
Yeah.
So I guess,
And this is the
hopefully-
new DA put this in place.
Wonderful.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously it's the fetus attitude, or however you want to phrase it. And it's self-preservation, right? Basically that's what it is.
Right.
The problem now that was shown with Charlie Kirk, they're going to kill you no matter how good or how much you,
Yeah. They just
Don't
want
make
us. They just
waves.
want you dead.
they're going to kill you. So, and that's what I think most people don't understand about the communist, Marxist, socialist mentality is they're going to use you until you get to the point where you're going, wait a minute. And that's the last thing you're going to see, because they don't care about you.
At its root, it's terrorism.
Yeah.
Because what they want is their message was, anybody else out there that wants to step into Charlie Kirk's shoes, look what's waiting
Right?
for you.
Exactly.
Well, actually, Greg Gutfeld the other night was right after this happened. He said, when I go home tonight, my wife is going to tell me, because he had a bunch of dates coming up, outside, amphitheaters or whatever, that she's not going to want me to do these gigs. And he said, I'm still going to do them. I am not going to live in fear. Now, I think maybe under the circumstances, he should rethink that somehow, or any of those conservative speakers, they should start rethinking it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Again, at its core, you're 100% right. But then they win.
Right.
That's exactly
What they want.
Yes.
And
that's the only way they can win. Really.
And that's how they're winning. I mean, think about it. Half of this country does not know what the definition of a woman is.
Right.
Half of this country doesn't know. They know, but they won't admit it. And those are the people. I mean, you drive around, you look around, you see, people who can't read. I've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's for you, Bobby. That's for you. For you.
That is an American voter.
Mm-hmm.
That's an American voter.
Yep.
And these people that are cheering for the demise of Charlie Kirk, every single one of them is an American voter.
Which is scary.
And I don't know, these people, it's like a hydra. You cut the head off one head and two more sprout up. I don't know. These people are multiplying almost like something from outer space, you know?
Yep.
But
that's the point. They're whether you've been trying to do their will or when you're no longer useful, you're dead.
Yeah.
That's the mentality of the Marxists. And you can look at Mao, you can look at, Stalin, you can look at all the histories of the mass murders and killings and hundreds of thousands of people wiped out. That's the end game. And that is the fear to permanently place people under that. If you go out of step, that's what's going to happen to you.
Yuri Bezmenov gave a I don't want to say a speech. I don't know the right word for it, but a commentary in the 80s talking about how communism works and how it's manifesting.
I remember that. That was great.
And he kind of he broke down the groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
And the people you're talking about are what he classified as the useful idiots.
Yes.
We don't need to expend energy on them. They're already believers, and they're going to toe the line. And when it's time, we eliminate them.
Exactly.
We don't need to feed those people anymore,
Exactly.
The ones that are on the right, we're never going to get through to them. Don't even bother. It's the ones in the middle that we have to go for.
Yep.
And the scary part is this was in the 80s when he did this, when he did this interview. And if you go back and you watch through the 90s and then the early 2000s,
here we are
now,
the whole thing.
Everything he said that was going to happen is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the last stage of it now.
Yep.
And piggybacking off of what you said, I believe it's already too late.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean that's going back to what I said before. In order to take the country back, it won't be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think we can do it through the ballot box?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I really don't. I believe that ship has sailed. And just to be clear, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm just saying that what I'm afraid of is that whether I advocate for it or not, violence will be upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it already is.
Exactly. The first shots have already been fired. The question is, where do we go?
The big thing, Derin, is they're telling us, or they're pointing fingers at conservatives.
We're supposed to be the ones starting it.
Yeah, that we're starting this crap. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are shooting people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even the mass shooters. All this stuff is all lefties.
Yep.
But
we're the bad guys.
It's complete madness, and I don't believe we have diverged so far in the political system in this country that, like I said earlier, and we kind of all agreed, I don't even want to vote for somebody who says I want to reach across the aisle and work with the other side.
Nope.
No, I don't want to be friends with you. Mm-hmm. There are people that were at my wedding that I don't even call anymore because I want my last words that I spoke with them to have been friendly.
Right.
And
because you know where it would go.
I know if I call them and I have a conversation with them, we're going to end on bad terms. And these are people that were very close to me, close to my heart. And I just want to remember them as my friends. But I don't even want to be friends with people that are like this anymore. I just don't even want to do it. It's just too exhausting.
Oh, it is. It's an energy suck, complete energy suck. Because you're afraid to say you're going to say the wrong thing, or you're going to piss them off, or whatever.
Walk on eggshells, or and
which I don't pretend to do anymore.
No, right?
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Yeah, right.
You're wrong. That's it. I'm not going to budge. Yeah. There's no debate to be had, because what's happening now is the debates that are going on is an unstoppable force is hitting an immovable object, and that's where we are with our political views now. And I'm sure you have your outliers, and Charlie Kirk himself. I've watched beautiful moments where he's changed people's minds.
Yes.
Yeah. He kind of, somebody saw the light, you know?
But that's really rare.
And it's the exception, not the rule. And there is just no more purpose, because you get morons like the aforementioned AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and those zeros.
My question is, how do they keep getting reelected?
Because the other zeros that believe in their rhetoric, that's who lives in their district.
It's unbelievable.
But that's why I'm saying there's too much of a disparity between the right and the left now to come to a peaceful agreement.
To me, it's common. It's common sense, though.
Common sense isn't so common.
Okay.
That's the problem with common sense. Is common sense isn't common.
Because if there were common sense, there wouldn't be cops.
Exactly. Or you wouldn't. Or good parenting.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, our job as parents is to teach our children common sense, and
right from wrong.
And right from. But look at some of look at this kid.
Yeah. Right.
And
his father was a cop.
And I, in no way, shape, or form am I blaming the father, because a lot of people love to say, they immediately go to the easy. It's the parents. It's the parents. Let me tell you something. I have been to homes as a cop on patrol. I have been to homes because the kid was a complete screw up. And this kid's poor mother, single mother, in tears in her kitchen. I never taught him this. I teach him not to do this. It's the friends that he hangs out with. I tell him he can't hang out with. And I will tell you, I have walked out of some of those houses and bawled my eyes out just out of sadness for that mother, and empathy for that mother. And just really good people that just have rotten kids, defective units is the best way to put it. And I have seen kids that were great kids, do good in school, get their asses kicked in school by the other kids. And in their home, we go to their home because there's a domestic dispute, and both of their parents are exactly what you should teach your kids not to be. Right. And yet this kid at this age, you know, a freshman in high school, realizes these are two examples of what not to be. So it's not always the parents. So I don't know what this kid's father taught him. And it isn't my place to speculate on it. Although as human beings, we're always going to speculate. Oh, yeah. You know, we all like to try to take the high road. It's not for me to judge. We're all going to judge. Yeah. But
well, I'm thinking if we discussed this before we started, was that the father turned him in. So obviously, the father's got some kind of moral character, I would think, or hope.
We like to think so. Is it moral character, or was it out of pure, unadulterated fear that if I don't get this kid to turn himself in, he's gonna die? Somebody's gonna. Well,
he's gonna die anyhow, because they're gonna put him in front of a firing squad in Utah.
From your lips to God's ears, hopefully.
Right.
But there's a legal game that they can play. Oh, he's not right in his mind. I mean, the kid, from what I understand,
there's a chance out.
Well, he was an engineering student, went to that college for one semester, evidently, and then went to he went to another college, transferred to another college, and he was in some kind of apprenticeship program. for the past couple of years. So he wasn't a dummy.
Well, whatever he was, he's a murderer.
Right.
But I don't know. There was always that chance that, maybe, we plead some kind of a mental illness or something and he gets life in prison and then you don't have to watch your son die. You know what I mean? But, make no mistake, no matter how much people want to take the high road, no matter how much it's advocated for, that's not who we are. That's not what we do. There are plenty of Charlie Kirk supporters and Charlie Kirk fans that are out there that would have loved to have gotten a crack at this kid.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would even be willing to bet that they were out there actively hunting him.
I wouldn't doubt it.
And his father being a 27-year veteran, if that's what he was, police officer or a sheriff's deputy, whatever he was, he knows that. And did he turn him in out of moral character or did he turn him in out of fear for his son being made an example of?
Or to save his own butt for harboring a fugitive.
That can't be overlooked.
Right.
When the second you said it, I don't think that's what it is. And then I gave it a thousandth of a second pause and then
could be.
It's not outside the realm of possibilities.
Not at all.
And it's not a ridiculous.
And then from what I heard today on the interwebs, thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Every time.
He had. Why is this cracking up so
It's
much?
just always funny to me. And it will always be funny to me.
It's stupid. But
I invented pants.
you're right.
Sorry.
We're having fun. If you haven't noticed, your kid is totally bored, but he's got his earbuds in and he's like completely somewhere else, but that's okay. Anyhow,
I'll watch it on rerun. Right?
yeah, right. But what I was going to say was not only is the father, this is just a hypothesis. Bruce is usually the conspiracy theorist, right? But I'm going for it
I
tonight.
ran out.
He ran out.
Well's dry.
Yeah.
So watching this the past couple of days, since I'm such a news junkie. So the old man is in law enforcement. His kid kills Charlie Kirk. So now the kid goes home, which I think is stupid. I mean, you would think by this time he could have been like in Europe or something, right?
Yeah.
Hop a plane, disappear. But so the old man turns him in to save his own butt for not getting prosecuted for harboring a fugitive. Then there's a bunch of kids that evidently, friends of this guy, that helped him. This is what I heard today. Reading and listening on the internet. Thank you, Al Gore.
Thank you, Al Gore.
And on some of the mainstream media, they were talking about that some of his friends actually helped him do this. Pulling it off, like just from like dropping him off at a certain spot, picking this up, doing this, doing that, because it just doesn't make sense.
Well, I guess we'll find out when they tell this kid that they're going to kill him.
Right. But will he really care if he's like, that far out?
Or if in a desperate attempt to save his own life, he starts singing like a bird.
Right. Exactly.
Now, do you, in your police head, do you think that this was like a larger like thing? Or do you think it was like a lone wolf?
I do believe there were other people involved with it to some degree. Exactly what you just said. Even if it was something as simple as giving him a ride there so that he wouldn't be seen carrying the rifle or, helping him conceal.
They were showing some video, I think TMZ had it, where he was limping.
Yeah, he had it shoved down his pants.
It was I was thinking about this because I have a sporterized Mauser that I hunt with, right? And I'm thinking,
might want to get rid of that.
Yeah, right. No, the thing shoots great. I mean, it really does. I mean, it's taken down many a deer. Anyhow, but I was thinking, like, sticking that down your pants like that, that's got to be like really uncomfortable, especially with a scope on it.
And it was a big scope.
Right. So now if you took the scope off and threw it in a backpack, now you put the scope back on. How do you zero your gun again? Right? This is all the stuff that's been going through my brain.
I've had so many thoughts on this and different directions it could have gone in. And I mean, to get back to your original question, do I think he was a lone wolf or do I think he acted in concert? I do believe that there were other people that not only assisted him to some, even if it was in an infinitesimal, minute degree, I believe that there were people who knew he was going to do it, and they did nothing.
So they're all accomplices then?
Well,
Or
technically
could be.
speaking, their defense could be, listen, people say crazy things all the time. I say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go outside right now and I'm going to throw a rock into the window of the next car that comes down that street. And we're all laughing and joking in here like old buddies. And he's not really going to do that. And the next thing you know, you hear crash. Oh my God, he did it. You know what I mean?
Right.
They will all have that defense. He said
Right.
I hate Charlie Kirk too, but, and we were all just talking about what we wish would happen, but we didn't think he would really do it. So they will all have that as a defense. They would have to prove that they had a hand in the planning, the execution, and the escape for them to be convicted,
Right.
or even considered to be charged with have probable cause to charge these kids with any kind of accessory.
But that's one of the things that I thought about immediately was the old man turned him in just to save his own butt. That's just my thought.
It's like I said, it's not a ridiculous notion to think about, but I also,
It's a rough one.
Parents will do a lot for their children. They will dig down into reserves of emotions they did not know that they had in order to support their child in whatever they think is the best way. And it's difficult for me to put myself in this man's shoes because I like to believe that I have raised my son to not be that monster.
Right.
To do that to someone.
Well, having met your kid on several occasions, I don't think he is that monster as he sits here laughing at me.
But, but having said that, sitting there and thinking the masses are going to tear my child limb from limb with their bare hands, if necessary. And make no mistake.
They would do it.
I wanted to do it. I said a little prayer, even though I'm not a pious person. Please let me find this guy because he is not going to court if I find him. That was my immediate emotional response.
Right, exactly.
And
it's like, I think we all felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same,
and
rage and anger.
His father being a 27-year, again, we're presuming he was a 27-year veteran of the police. I think that's accurate. We're going on that presumption.
Right.
Law and order. There's a process. And guilty or not guilty, my son deserves his day in court.
Okay.
And his father may, and I'm not saying this is what he did. I'm just offering a counterpoint to what.
It's a podpinion.
It's not even necessarily my pod. It's a possibility. It's a possible outcome. It could have been that. It could have been that his father, being in law enforcement, was a staunch fan of Charlie Kirk because the majority of law enforcement is typically typically right leaning. And this was just something I can't accept that my son did this to a righteous person, and he must face the music. So I know I'm kind of digging a little deep here and going off on different avenues.
That's why we asked you here.
But I try, and there are contingencies that I might not have thought of.
I want you to put your Sherlock Holmes hat on here,
Well, I kind of am right now, but I was primarily a helicopter pilot for the cops. I wasn't a detective.
No, I understand that.
Detectives had an inbox. Even when they were off, they had work coming in. I never wanted to be a detective. I just wanted to fly their helicopters.
No, which is cool. But no, you have a very analytical mind. As you can look at things and see things from a different perspective than we could.
Yeah, but and to be quite honest with you, whatever reason he had for turning in his son, or at least convincing his son to turn himself in, which I think is technically really
Probably
what happened.
right. Yeah.
I'm glad that that happened. When it first happened, my wife said to me, they're never going to find this kid.
That's what I thought,
They're
too.
never going to find him.
I thought it was going to be another Richard Rudolph thing or another Eric Freen
right.
deal.
And my answer to her immediately
Yeah,
was,
you said that to me, too, in a text message.
yes, I said, these are the exact words I said to my wife. I said, not only are they going to find him, they're going to find him by Friday.
I have the text message. I can show it to you. He said that.
And the reason I said that, because my wife said, why do you think that? And I said, okay, fair question. I just made a bold statement, you know? So I said, these people cannot help themselves. Somebody who pulled off, and I'm going to call it a mission for lack of a better term, but that was this kid's mission. He pulled off a successful mission. He will not be able to. These people cannot. It's funny because these are the ones that yell the loudest.
Right.
I know my rights.
Yeah.
I have the right to remain silent. Yes, stupid, you do. You just don't have the ability to.
Right.
And
So you think this kid started yapping?
I knew he would start yapping, and somebody was going to realize, holy Christ. This kid is in my house, whether it was his father, whether it was one of his friends, whether it was a third party, you know. This kid is in my house talking about how he just murdered somebody. I am going to be on the hook for harboring a fugitive.
Right.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yes.
Right, with the father.
So, but, you know, that is something that can't be overlooked. And, you know,
So you think he just opened his mouth to the wrong person?
that's
or
why
to the right person?
Yeah, that's why they're not only going to catch him, they're going to catch him by Friday. And here we are on Friday, and he's on the news. You know, we got him. You know,
Now,
and two other friends of mine said the same thing. I think they're never going to find this guy, and I told them too. And I have the text messages to show that.
you just won a new car.
Well, you know, this is one of those things where I wish I was right about things that pertained to me and my personal success, the way I'm right about calling these things. The running joke I have with my son, and he's probably rolling his eyes right now.
Yeah, he is.
I have, and we as parents have the ability to see the future. And I'll use something very benign. And Bruce had the ability to see the future a few minutes. Well, actually, at this point, it's a little while ago. Is that can going to be okay there, or are you going to knock it over?
Right.
He was foretelling the future. You know, it's, you know,
We're talking about.
so, you know, it's, and again, I'm going off on a tangent because it's what I do, but I feel like it illustrates my
the
point.
Italian in you.
It's the Italian, and I can't help myself. So, you know, when my son was younger, you know, we're eating dinner, and you know, he scoops the food and tries to bring it to his plate, and it falls down on the table. And it's a small child in Zaire saw that coming. Move your plate over to the pan and then scoop it onto the plate so that if it does fall, it falls onto your plate. Why? Because I can see the future. I knew this kid was going to open his mouth and blab.
Right.
And maybe he didn't. I don't know. But something happened.
Well, from what I understand, he actually did say something to his dad.
He did.
About-
I read somewhere. Yeah.
That he actually confessed to his parents.
Yeah.
Or parent. I don't know if he.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know what where the mother is, but
And again, to speculate on this, maybe mom and dad did their best to raise him right.
Right.
And this kid acted on emotion and realized, I just took a human life. And I took the
After
life of
everything
somebody
calmed
who
down.
never did anything to me. And maybe, just maybe, there was a hint of remorse. I am giving him. I don't believe that for 1 second,
Right.
but I would be remiss if I didn't at least put it out there to be thought of. You know what I mean? But
I think he's just nuts. But now, so here's a question, because I don't know how this works. So let's say the kid goes in. Let's say he confessed to his dad. So now he goes and turns himself in, which obviously means that he's saying, I did it. Now, can they use that in court
guess
that he pled
I
guilty?
guess it would depend if he was the guy.
Like, how does
person
that
of
work?
interest Doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty.
Yeah, but if he, like, let's say he goes in and admits it.
Him saying it to his father would make it hearsay.
No, but I mean, if he went in and just turned himself in.
Oh, if he went in and said, I did it?
Yeah.
So the argument could be made, and I know I'm getting a little technical.
No, but why would he, if he didn't do it, why would you turn yourself in?
There are instances in the
Right.
past of people who did not commit crimes that claimed the responsibility for it,
Just for the attention.
the notoriety, the fame of it.
Okay.
I mean, we've already established that this kid is not right in the head.
Right.
So I want to be a martyr to my people. You know what I mean? But
Well, let's say he goes into the police department, turns himself in, and pleads guilty. Now what? Does he still have a Looney Tune excuse that I did it?
well, that'll be determined by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. The police don't have the tools, the training, or the know-how, or quite frankly, the scope to determine that.
So in other words, he can plead guilty to a cop or in the while he's being interrogated, yet he can still get off on an insanity plea.
Again, that would be in the realm of what a court-appointed psychiatrist.
Okay.
They would have to make that determination. But going in, like if he, let's just say for argument's sake, he kicked in the door to the police station and said, I did it. And the defense attorney wants to say, I mean, because at the end of the day, we are patriotic Americans and we do believe that we have a system and everybody is entitled to a defense.
Right.
Everybody's entitled to a defense. That's what makes us a great country. One of the many things that makes us a great country. So he goes in and he says, I did it. They didn't read him his rights and blah, 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 blah. What he did by doing, and we're presuming that that's what he did.
right.
You know,
They
this
didn't
is-
Mirandize him.
yeah, this is pure speculation
Speculation,
and conjecture right now. But let's just say for argument's sake, that's what he did. What he did by doing that would be called a spontaneous utterance,
Okay.
which is 100% legal and admissible in court.
Even though they didn't Mirandize him.
Even though they didn't Mirandize him, I'll give you a more benign example of that. And for those of you out there listening, take notes. You get pulled over by a police officer. You know why I stopped you?
I don't know.
I have no idea. Because if you say, I kind of shaved that light or I was going a little too fast,
So you just did.
you have just made a spontaneous utterance. He had not written you that summons, which a ticket, understand, when you are given a ticket, you are given, we call them summonses in New York City. When you get a summons, you are issued that summons in lieu of arrest. Anything I write you a ticket for, I can arrest you for. You go through a red light, I can arrest you for that. The reason we don't do that is because we would flood the court system and the jail system every single night with offenders. Sorry, I'm itching my nose. We would flood the system with offenders. Summonses are issued in lieu of arrest for minor offenses. That's what they're for. That's the purpose. That's the official purpose. The real purpose is they generate revenue.
Right.
So, that was just a cherry on top.
So if a cop pulls you over and says, do you know why I pulled you over?
I have no, officer, with all due respect, I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm sorry, officer. I have no idea. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to say, F you. I'm not answering you. Officer, with all due respect, I have no idea. Okay, no problem. And then you move on with the traffic stop. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you don't. It remains to be seen. But that's called a spontaneous utterance.
So if he went into the police department and said, I did it, they can use that in court.
Yeah, that's called an admission. It's not a confession, it's an admission. If he goes and then sits down, actually, I take that back. That actually is a confession. I did it. An admission would be something a little bit more
Vague.
cryptic, like I squeezed the trigger. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I didn't squeeze it at him, or I wasn't trying to kill him. I was just trying to scare him. That would be like an admission. And some of the lawyers out there, comment below, may correct me on this, but admission versus confession there is a difference. But to answer your question, yes, that would be either an admission or a confession. I'll go with that because I'm kind of dropping the ball
and then they would interrogate him and videotape it, and then
they would use that in the interview. They would say, so when you came in, you said, I did it. What exactly did you do? Mm-hmm. And then now they're writing down every word he says. Now, at this point, they would have Mirandized him and all of that. Mm-hmm. And that way, they're keeping everything above board. Mm-hmm. Because, remember, I have the right to remain silent.
Right.
You just don't have the ability to sometimes. Right. But, but by walking in, and the really funny part is when we would collar people, arrest people, they would start saying things thinking, these are the street lawyers, thinking if I say it now before they read me my Miranda rights, then I can use that as a defense, and the whole thing will get thrown out of court. And it's like, no, stupid, oops, no. And to be honest with you, of all the arrests that I made, I read Miranda rights once.
Really?
Once. You are not required to read the Miranda rights when you arrest somebody, at least not in New York City. Different departments might have different policies on that. But our policy was you must Mirandize before you interview, before you start asking questions about it. And what people forget is that everybody, including cops, has what's known as the common law right of inquiry. You are allowed to ask, what is your name? Where do you live? And what are you doing here? And it has been deemed by the Supreme Court to not be a violation of your civil rights or your constitutional rights. It is not a violation. You have the right to say, fangul. Sorry for the foul language.
Oh, I don't care.
Anybody who speaks Italian out there. You have the right to say, I'm not answering your questions, and answer none of them. You have the right to do, but they are not violating your rights by asking you those three things and not Mirandizing you before saying it.
So now what about these whack jobs? I see them on like YouTube and stuff where they get pulled over and they do this, I'm a citizen of the whatever.
Oh, the sovereign citizens.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite ones to
Did you ever
watch.
run into any of those when you were a cop?
2. I had 2 experiences with them, and they were the funniest experiences.
What do you do?
Well, both of them went to jail.
Okay.
Both of them, one of them got pulled out of his window.
I want to see video of that.
And this is long before body cameras,
right?
But and I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not a ninja, and and I don't walk around like a tough guy. Say I kick in doors. This guy got pulled out of his window, and he went to jail. He got his seatbelt cut, and then he got yoked out of his window.
But I don't understand that whole thing. That they can actually have the audacity to do that.
And it's so funny because it never works. And they always pull out pieces of paper and I have the Magna Carta or whatever, the Articles of Confederation. And they start claiming all these things. It's a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly what they said to me.
But it cracks me up. They'll hold it up. The window is like open this much, right?
And they drop it out the window.
Right. Or they hold it up so the cop can read it.
And they tell you need to read this. And they're like, no. What I need is your license. and it really is hilarious.
Really?
Like those people,
how can you not laugh?
I did.
Oh.
I did every time. Well, I say every time. It was only twice. Right. But every time I see it on YouTube. And it's funny because some of these cops, they start to get real twisted up and they get torqued up and they're like, I'm not having this conversation with you. And it's bro, relax.
Yeah, just laugh at him.
Relax.
He's nuts.
The more you laugh at these people,
the more pissed off they get.
It spins them up. And you can see the pressure dial on their forehead. They go right up. They get all torqued up. And it's really, really funny. And at first, it was one of those, oh my God, is this really happening? We've heard about
where's the candid camera?
I'm waiting for one of the guys from Steve-O from Jackass to jump out and say, gotcha, But and I'm like, oh, goody, so, and it was really funny. Right. But yeah, I mean, there's not much to tell on that. I mean, I'm not real. I don't have a whole lot of exciting war stories.
I just had to ask.
Yeah, it happened to me twice. Both times they went to jail. And it was really funny because the second one, the one that didn't get yoked out of his window, realized his error in court. And
Too late.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, that guy, it's New York City. You know, that guy probably walked away with what we call an ACD, an adjournment in contemplation of a dismissal. You screwed up. You have 6 months. If you don't get any summonses, if you don't get into any trouble, we'll dismiss this. But if you get into trouble in between that 6 months, you get in trouble for that and this. So, you know, they called it an ACD, an adjournment in contemplation of a dismissal.
Okay.
I don't even know if they're still using that term anymore because you know how it is. People get hired into these positions and they've got to reinvent the wheel to justify their existence.
Doesn't make sense to me at all.
You know, everything's got to be called something different. And, you know, we went through that with the different unit names in the police department. It was, you know, there was a unit called the task force, and then they became strategic response group. And I don't know, now they're probably called the muffin squad. Who knows?
Hitting up the bakeries, drinking coffee and donuts, right?
Do have good bagels.
So what do you guys say?
Yeah.
Wrap it up a little bit here?
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on.
It's been a pleasure.
Hope you come
sir.
back.
Yeah, you got to come back.
We have more, lots more Podpinions to go over.
I'll be happy to.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We'll see how much I get lambasted in the comments on this one.
Hey, who cares?
Yeah. Right.
We get lambasted. That means the people are actually watching us.
Yeah, that's
There you
good.
go.
Right?
Yeah, it's better than a blank feed.
I mean, your kid is sleeping over there, but oh no, he's not. There he is. All right, we'll see you next time,
Yep.
folks.
Good night,
care.
everyone.
Bye.
Slam the follow button. This is Podpinions.